Again, welcome all. We're going to call the meeting to order. Please know that the board convened an executive session to consider discussions regarding proposed pending or current litigation. I would like to start by saying the pledge. If we could please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And again, welcome. Thank you for coming. I will turn it over to start to Dr. Dolan.
Thank you very much. And welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for being at our meeting of the Board of Education. And I have a special honor to award to one of our students. And I'd mentioned this at our last meeting, but I'm absolutely delighted that she and her parents are here tonight. She's the very first student we're honoring this year. And I assure the board and the community, she's not the last. And that's for two reasons. One, we have a wonderful, talented group of students. I've come to know that very quickly. But in addition to that, I think this is a great forum to honor kids and for the community to celebrate. And, you know, I know nothing better than to celebrate than our kids. So with that, I have a certificate of achievement for a Long Island Scholar Artist for Music for the month to Eileen Zhao, who is from our high school. Eileen, congratulations. And if you come up, I have a certificate and a pen.
Got it. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, we will now proceed to the approval of the minutes for the meeting of August 19th, 2021. Is there a motion? Thank you, Rich. And a second?
Second.
Second. Any comments or discussion of the minutes? Okay, Betty, excellent work as always. Thank you. That was a lot to cover. Thank you. All in favor of approval of those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much. We'll now turn to the report of our superintendent, Dr. Dolan.
Thank you very much. So the beginning of the year report from the superintendent is always a little bit longer, and this year's, for me anyway, is longer than any I've ever given before for some reasons I'll go over. So bear with me. It's a detailed report on some of the activities that have taken place over the last week or so. So what I'd like to do in reflecting on the opening of school is talk about the last week, because last Thursday, exactly 1 week ago, was when it really started. Our new teacher orientation was held. Chris Zublionis put together a wonderful program for about 20 new teachers who we have here in this library for the most part. They were pleased to be here, happy, exuberant, a great bunch. And I've already mentioned several times how much I admire the hiring process that goes on here. It's rigorous. It involves students. I know I've mentioned that every time, but I think that's really remarkable that there's a student voice in hiring our teachers. I think that's great. I also had the honor of addressing them, had a lot of fun doing that, and each one of them very happy to be here. The following day, Monday, August 30th, was the next event, which comes under the heading of the opening of school. We had our administrative retreat. That's an event where all of the district administrators, the directors, all the principals, assistant principals, the entire central office, we all come together for a meeting to get the year going, to talk about what's new, to be prepared. This year we started in a different way, though. I've hit the staff pretty hard with this idea of operating in metaphor. You know, what's a good metaphor for this place? And I've gotten some great answers from people on a good metaphor for the North Shore schools. It really helped me understand the place quickly. Well, I handed a metaphor back to them, and we started the day by cooking. We assembled over in the high school cafeteria in the kitchen, and I found it to be a great metaphor for all of our efforts to collaborate, cooperate, work together in close quarters, I might add, share with each other, and ultimately sustain each other by way of the food that we cooked and that we ate together. Our food service director, Alan Miller, unbelievable the job that he did assisting us. He was the chef d'hotel in that kitchen and supervised us and directed us and probably did more of the work than any of us, but led us through all of that with his crew also, his high school crew, and it was a lot of fun working with them. Interestingly, the food we prepared and ate was completely consistent with what our high school students eat for lunch. That is, we didn't do filet mignon. We did what our kids eat for lunch. And the most common reaction among all of our participants was that this was not the school lunch that they recall from when they went to school. It was really excellent. Great job. Thank you, Alan and his staff. Following that, we did stay and discuss several items related to the opening of school, common concerns, finalized plans, and got ready for Tuesday, August 31st, which is the first day for teachers. Commonly called Superintendent's Conference Day. I'm going to let you in on a secret that is one of the worst misnomers in education, because Superintendent's Conference Day is usually the assistant superintendents who do all the work. Mm-hmm. And Chris and Olivia did indeed organize and arrange and help me a lot with some of my skills putting charts together. Thank you very much, Chris. And in fact, we had a very good day. We welcome back all of our teachers in a unique way. By splitting the day up into modules, we were able to keep each faculty in their own building for the entire day. That accomplished a couple of things. It kept them apart. It kept them in smaller groups. It also allowed them to be in their own building more, not traveling between buildings, so they had even more time in their own classrooms getting ready. We also did some mandatory training, faculty meetings, department meetings, and training on Infinite Campus, our new student data system, and they were all accomplished. Additionally, President Ludmar and I embarked upon the Dave and Tom tour as we went around to all 5 of the buildings and spoke personally to each of the 5 faculties. I think our comments complemented each other well. We received some nice feedback from people who appreciated hearing from us, and we're very happy that we did that. A good, somewhat personalized, and I think an effective use of the day. That evening, we're still on Tuesday, from 6:30 to almost 9:30, all 7 members of this Board of Education toured the 5 buildings of the district and inspected their readiness for opening. That is a statutory requirement. The board is supposed to do that. You know that I've been doing this for a while. You know that I've been a superintendent elsewhere. This is the first time I've ever done it with all 7 members of the board present for the entire time. And I commend the board for taking that responsibility so seriously. You were all there, and on a night where we were worried about the weather already, you hung in there, and we got all of that inspection done. 2 realizations presented. Opening a week earlier than usual did present some challenges, and we were very aggressive and optimistic in a lot of our planning and building over this summer. As you all know, there are some delivery issues that we are all experiencing that stand in the way of completion of some jobs, but we have found workarounds for the most part. I know we will use the 5-day weekend that's upon us now, Labor Day and 2 additional days that students are not here, to polish the buildings further and address as many additional projects as possible. And my prediction is that given that extra week, we will be right where we ought to be relative to the projects that we know we can get done. Kudos to John Hall, who happens to be with us today, the man behind the plexi, and all of our custodians. Our custodians had a particularly difficult summer because we did not have a lot of guidance about what the opening protocols would be. There was a lot of hurry up and waiting. When do we do this? When do we do that? And when we finally did determine what our protocols were going to be, they had to move very, very quickly, and they did, and did a great job of getting us open. Thank you very much, John. Appreciate it. Wednesday, September 1st, the actual opening of day, as we greeted our students. Hats off to the building administrators and all of our staff. I found them to be enthusiastic and genuine in their greetings, and students appeared to be very happy to be back. I had the good fortune to witness arrival at Glen Head. I was there and met kids, and there's nothing more special than seeing a kindergarten student arrive for their very first day ever of school. Only 1 set of tears at Glen Head. I was really impressed, but I give some credit to all of our principals who have already had the kids into the building. This is not their first visit. They have them in to see the classroom, and there's a comfort level that's already been built in. So I'm not surprised that there was only 1 set of tears. So I saw arrival at Glen Head, departure at Seacliff out on the sidewalk, and I had a chance to visit every other building in between. They were all humming with activity. There's something I've noted here that I've noted in some of the other places I've been, but I think it's worth noting. As I looked into classrooms, as I walked around all 5 of our buildings, it was really hard to distinguish what I was observing from what I might have observed on day 47, on day 71. Kids are in classes, kids are learning, teachers are teaching, they fall upon it. And the analogy of riding a bike, you never forget it, right? The kids are there, they're active, they're engaged, they're doing some great work. I was thrilled, by the way, to see Lincoln Logs at Glenwood Landing. Brought me back, but I was glad to see Lincoln Logs in one of our kindergarten classes. Kids were productive and just doing a great job. They were engaged and clearly very happy to be back. I did take advantage of one Seacliff kindergarten class. I often do this. I asked for some advice. I told them I was new. I said, do you have any advice for me? And the advice I got was ice cream, popcorn, and pizza. I think there's a theme there, but it was nice to ask and nice to hear. Dismissal was smooth, and despite the Wednesday forecast, we got the day in without rain. I know it's hard to think back to Tuesday night. Tuesday night, the prediction was 3 to 5 inches of rain on Wednesday, and we waited all day for the rain and knew we were dismissing early for the elementary day, and we were outside. I was outside for that at Seacliff, and I don't think it started raining till about 1:15. We got the whole day in with a minimal amount of rain, which was absolutely great. Guess where I'm going? Normally, my report would end there, but because of today's events, I need to continue for one more day to Thursday, September 2nd, 2021. At about 6:44 this morning, I was advised that our buses were not accessible because an electrical wire was draped across the street at the entrance to our facility. By 6:45, I determined that it was not safe to attempt to bring those buses out, and a decision was made to open school, but without transportation. We immediately began the process of notification, and I acknowledge now that it took a little bit longer than I would have liked, but it is possible that 6:45 a.m. is the worst possible time to begin that process. There's some kids that are already headed to the bus stop. There are some kids that are already at school. There's a lot of faculty that's already at school. It is right in the worst time to have to do that, but we were obligated to do so. I heard from a handful of parents today concerned about the late notification, and as is my practice, I responded to each one of them. And once they understood the particulars, they were most understanding. Our staff, including principals and assistant principals, rose to yet another challenge, and there were moments in the buildings today that looked downright normal. They really did. It was a good day. I want to stress, our fleet is fine. This was not an issue of the yard being flooded. This was not an issue of we should have moved the buses, because the yard was fine. It was a once ever, never happened before, and please, never going to happen again, incident where a pole was tipped over, the wire was hanging, and by the way, fortuitously, later in the day, we discovered that there was an exposed gas main out in the street also. So if we had pulled the buses out, I don't know, but actually, it was a very easy decision not to do so. I thank Michelle Hall and her staff for the fine job that they do as well. However, we did experience some severe damage to other facilities, including our turf field. I am told that the vendor Landtech was there today, and we've been in touch with our insurance reciprocal, NYSER. We will be able to effect repairs and seek reimbursement from them later on. I regret to inform the community that right now the turf field is closed and the track is closed, and you will see a notice that will be on the district website, should be there right now, while we figure out what we're going to do. As I said, Landtech's already been there. We'll do everything we can. Fortunately, we do have the resources that we can get that fixed quickly before we get reimbursed. And I thank Olivia for her excellent accounting to be able to allow us to do that. I happen to know that the custodian at Seacliff was in at 3:45 a.m. because there was flooding in the basement. I got an email from him. I'm certain that others were called upon too. I thank all the custodians profusely. That's the second time I've done that tonight, but I am also going to find some way, and I've already talked to John about finding some way to materially do something with that thank you. We're going to figure that out. There is one hero from this morning that I would like to acknowledge. Received a couple of emails about this person, Vicky Giamundo. Anybody know that name? You know her. Vicky Giamundo is the crossing guard in front of the high school. The light went out for about a half an hour in front of the school. And I received emails from parents telling me that Vicky Giamundo probably saved a couple of lives with her actions, with her screaming. That was the word that was used. She did a great job of that. I already went out and thanked Vicky and told her that I'd be telling you that I was thanking her publicly. I also know how things work, so I called the 6th precinct, and I gave a report there to the commissioner over there, commending her, and what a wonderful job she did. And when I went out to thank her, she refused to look at me. because the whole time I was talking, she was still watching the kids in the street. She said, "I'm sorry, I can't look at you. I'm listening, but I can't look at you," because all she did was watch our kids. Luckily, our security staff went out to help her very quickly also, which was great. Almost done. Just a couple of other notes on opening. I always find this interesting. Enrollment numbers, 774 at the high school, 618 at the middle school, 361 at Glen Head, 428 at Glenwood Landing, 329 at Seacliff, for a total of 2510. That's our opening number. Not our official number. That doesn't happen until a little later in the year, but for opening day anyway. And for kindergarten, up slightly, 164 kindergarten students this year. I will get all those numbers to the board, and I'll also offer some historical data so that you'll know how that compares to previous years. 4 of those students who we have deserve just at least a note. There are people who come from a long way away to attend North Shore High School. This year, for the first time in a long time, we have 4 exchange students attending North Shore High School, because that was the school among all the schools in the United States that they chose to apply to and attend, found a sponsoring family here in the area. And as a result, this year we are joined by Albert Bergman from the Czech Republic. He enjoys sailing and plays for the Israeli national lacrosse team. Mila Frank from Germany enjoys photography, painting, enjoys traveling to World Heritage Sites, and is a volleyball player. We're not doing athletic recruiting, okay? We're not. Doesn't hurt, though. Niccolo Luciano from Italy has performed for several years in musical theater, enjoys outdoor exploration, and is a talented pianist. And finally, Maya Nisim from Argentina, fluent in Spanish and Hebrew, an avid tennis player and artist. I will send to the board videos of at least 2 of those kids, the videos that they submitted in order to attend, and I've watched them. First of all, their language skills kind of put us to shame. They're so articulate, and they're so happy to be here. And with that, I apologize for the lengthy report. I will not do this every month, but the opening of school is a big deal, and wanted to give as much detail as I could. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Dolan. That feels like not the report, but the week feels like 3 weeks in one. You talked about Tuesday and us going around. That really does not feel like two days ago.
Right.
Yeah. And I appreciated that you took a time out to mention not just the building leaders, but also Olivia and Chris for putting those days together, and John Hall. I mean, for the buildings, for all the work you did. I'm in manufacturing, and I know what the reality of supply chain delays are, and doing it for a campus of this size is substantial. So I thank you for getting everything ready and having a great day for the kids. So thank you. We will move on to our discussion topic, which is the goals that we set forth for the year. Every year, the board discusses its goals of what we hope to accomplish, some specific things beyond the myriad normal things that we hope to accomplish. Last board meeting, we had a discussion about those. They've now been crystallized into a document that is available for those of us who have access to board docs, which is the entire community. And the board will now discuss the specific written iteration of the goals and make some suggestions, refinements, etc., so we can come up with a final document to approve at our next meeting. Tom, are you ready for board comments or anything you want to do to introduce the goals?
I am, and just very briefly, I tried to capture everything that was offered at our last meeting. I think at least one of them, the bullets might be a little bit light, but anything you'd like to add, we can do so. And the board will see these one more time before they appear on an agenda. But I hope I captured it. And if I did not, it was, please don't take it personally. If there was something you said that didn't make its way in.
Okay, I had a few thoughts, but I'll turn it over to the trustees and see who would like just give me a nod and jump in. Anyone?
Go ahead, you
It
start.
doesn't-
You
yeah.
start.
I would say on the goal 4 about engagement and conclusion, I'm concerned that we need some more specific actionable items there. And I think this is in part a transition issue. At one of the last couple of meetings Dr. Melnick was at was the first time that we saw the survey data on that related to engagement and inclusiveness, and there was information there that was concerning. Then we have a new superintendent. And since then, we've had those two Bach-Harrison reports. We've had the Challenge Success Report, and they're all really quite conclusive about the extent to which our students are not as engaged as we are striving for by any stretch compared to national and other norms. So I think in a lot of ways, we have a tremendous amount of data on both engagement and inclusion. And as part of this strategic plan, that's been one of the pillars for a long time, and we've had committees working on this. So I think we're at the point where the board would really like to hear what some actionable items are. This is something we've been working on for a long time, and we really need to address. And so I think this feeds into also the board discussion topics for the year, is that I think it's time, given that the strategic plan has been in place for several years now, it's time to hear what could we put in place right now to address what are known issues from that data. So at minimum, the goal should be, let's hear the reports, let's ask for the action items, and let's see what we can proceed on.
So can I follow up on what Sarah's saying? So even if we just look at, for me, when I read through the goals, I was thinking a lot about the phrasing and how important the phrasing has to be, right? It's a public document. We use this to sort of set the stage for the year. And when I looked at the verbs that were used in goal 4, they're continue research, explore, include student voices. As Sarah said, I think it's time that we move to like the intervention aspect of this. So, yeah.
Can I add to that as well? Because I was thinking the same thing, and I was focusing on goal 4 as well. And I don't know if this is too specific, but I was just thinking, we had a homework committee. I know because I was on it, and we did an immense amount of research, and we rewrote the homework policy based on best practices and the research that we did. But I haven't really heard anything since the policy was adopted. So I'm just wondering, have we followed up, or has anything changed, and has that affected engagement? We did a survey at the time and found that a lot of students didn't find the homework to be meaningful. And I think in the Challenge Success survey, there was also questions about homework. So I guess I was thinking along the same lines of making sure that we have those interventions and making sure that policies that we have already adopted are being evaluated and followed.
I kind of felt like goal 4 didn't capture sort of our North Shore spirit as well. So if we look at the first bullet point, it says continue research on the degree to which our students feel engaged, including their active engagement with the work we want them to do. I think it's not about the work we want them to do. It's about helping them follow their passions and the work being student driven. So it's sort of, ironic that the goal is student engagement, but yet we're coming to it saying, do what we want you to do. So I feel like that section just sort of, it needs to reflect our philosophy as a district.
One last point on that is that the Teaching and Learning Committee also has done a lot of work in that regard, and came up with at least some preliminary recommendations last year that can probably meet a lot of the bullets that are here as they are. But we've done a fair amount of that work.
I don't know if this goes back to Sarah's original point, but a revisitation of the equity study and what we learned in that needs some actionable steps. I think it's time. Okay, please.
Oh, I had one other thing. When we spoke about this, we talked about engagement in the classroom as well as outside the classroom.
Yes.
And so the goal doesn't really make reference to that because we want students to be engaged in arts and athletics, right? We believe in whole child education and the full breadth of educational opportunities we can offer.
So I was going to talk about the community outreach with focus on community engagement. And I think one of the problems we have had with community outreach is that much of the information is distributed electronically. So unless you are on our email list, which there are people who are not on our email list and don't know that they can subscribe to it, not everyone is getting the same information. And we do send out flyers, but I think we have to start thinking out of the box as to how to get that information out in a more meaningful manner to the larger community. And I think this ties into what I was speaking about at the end of last year after the close budget vote. How do we get that information out? How do we get more community members in and getting the information from our superintendent, assistant superintendent, the board, that they are getting, that they have a forum to ask their questions, which is directly to us rather than trying to get information from other resources.
I think this is an interesting point. And we do mail some number of newsletters to everybody during the year, but I think we should really look like what it would take to increase that, right? So that like the mail by newsletter, I mean, it's a 2-page, 4-page really flyer. How we can make that cost effective so that we could do that a little more frequently. And I think if we could mail it more frequently, we could also include some devices in it so that we could hear back from the community too. Like, there are newsletters that go out routinely that include, some small survey device, et cetera, so that we're both providing more information and providing more opportunities to hear back from people. And I think that would be helpful too.
Yeah, and to that point, I think it's really important, we do things during the budget season where we'll go to the senior center or, have those kind of meetings. But I don't think we should just be talking to people when we want them to vote for our budget, right? Or vote not for necessarily, but cast their vote for the budget, either for or against, to vote, period. So I think we really need to engage the community on a continuous basis and meet with, there's the American Legion, there's the seniors group, maybe have meetings at, like Josh and the other legislatures have at the Gold Coast Library. There are other places where we could really try and engage other members of our community that are not on our email list, that do not have children in the district, where they can ask their questions, voice their concerns, that we can address those concerns and answer those questions proactively and not wait until the time of the budget vote, because by then people don't want to hear from you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think if it was going to be bulleted, I would say proactive, and this is not verbatim, it's off the top of my head, but proactively seek out opportunities to engage in dialogue with constituencies within our community beyond the school and parent population. Because we're talking about reaching more.
Right, Tom, I think you've actually captured that in the second bullet, but I think we're looking maybe for, a little more clarification there. That outreach that Marianne talks about is such a great point. There's so many events in every single one of our communities. We could, tables can be set up. I've heard this in some of our board committees as well, suggestions to do this.
Little League, you have North Shore Soccer Club. There are plenty of places where, you can find people who may or may not have students enrolled in our school, and that we can reach out to our community members.
And again, throughout the year, as you said, Marianne, not just in April and May. Yeah.
I had a similar idea with the communication. I was thinking about communities, and the success of a community really depends on how we communicate with stakeholders. And if we communicate poorly, it's going to lead to conflict. If we communicate well, transparently, productively, it's going to lead to cooperation, which is going to lead to the health of our entire organization. So I was starting to think, what would that communication look like? And I was thinking about it a little bit differently, more with like a three-pronged approach. How do we communicate to them, right? How do they communicate with us? We have enormous wealth of knowledge in this community. And how do we, as an organization, harness the power of that, of the expertise of the people here? And then the third thing would be, how do we all work together, right? In a cooperative way where we can together help achieve our shared values.
Yeah, I'd like to get to a place where we could reduce the sense of this false dichotomy that somehow there's the school and there's the community. There's the board and there's the community. This board is of the community. We're elected by the community. We all live in and represent the community. And the schools and the community are one. This is what ties us all together. And I'd like to see more of that in the way that we, again, dialogue throughout the year so we can reduce that feeling at the end, which I think has happened in the last couple of years where it's felt like it's a sales pitch at the end. Like, hey, we haven't really been there, but here we are. We're great. Come and check us out, etc. throughout the year. Okay, trustees, other thoughts? I guess I did have a couple that I'm just going to jump in with, if that's okay. Under the first one is very small, and we've already, within hopefully a small amount of time, we'll have accomplished it. But the very first bullet point, search for and then execute a contract with a search firm that will conduct a thorough search. I prefer, if it's okay, will assist the board in conducting a thorough search. And then under the critical review of the program, I am very excited about this. I think it's long overdue. This is not necessarily to change the wording at the goal level, but there are some specific data points that I would like to request as part of that, if that's okay. And they would be, I'm looking for real concrete data on students getting credit in college for their AP, IB, and dual enrollment classes historically, so we can really have a sense of what they're getting. The idea that students can enroll and have tremendous opportunities here, both for the intrinsic value of their learning, but also to get college credit, either to advance earlier or be able to move up to higher level classes earlier at their college level, that we need some real data to see what schools are doing these days and how our program meshes with that. I would like to see somehow real concrete data on how the IB program is viewed by colleges. I think it's something we talk about a lot, but I think a thorough survey would give us some real data from the college level that we could report back. Chris, this is like it's going to be a fun year. I thought we could get we have the college admission data, but it will be helpful to some degree if we can look at before and after the beginning of our dual enrollment or APIB to get a sense of how, if anything, things have changed for us.
Can I just
Sure.
say something, because I don't think you have the historical knowledge, and,
Sure.
and Rich will come with me on that.
Mhm.
Before we had the IB program, we had the senior experience that was put in with
Mhm.
Dr. Melnick.
Mhm.
And what that did is you had to block out periods 7, 8, and 9 for the senior experience, both junior year and senior year. As a result, students did not have the opportunity to enroll in as many AP courses. The only thing I'm grateful for the IB, and this is really the only thing, is that it did, eliminate that program, that it gave students more opportunities. It became a scheduling conflict. Like you had to pick which AP courses you were taking because they were all scheduled in periods 1 through 6, and period 6 was, if you were a music student, that was already taken for you because that was where you did band, orchestra, or choral. So I don't necessarily think that that's a fair analysis because you're not taking all the parameters. And I think also asking how colleges view the programs, that's very subjective. because most colleges will tell you they're not going to put themselves out there and say they're like AP better or IB better. They will tell you that they don't care which your student is engaged in, as long as they have taken the most rigorous course curriculum. And I'd like to talk about that as part of the study, because what we now put on students' transcripts is that the most rigorous course curriculum is the IB diploma program. So unless you're an IB diploma candidate, even though you may be taking an equally rigorous academic load, you are not considered in the most rigorous academic program, which is very disheartening, especially when you have years where you have 10 students in the IB diploma program. I think it's inherently unfair to the other 200 some odd students, however many they are, that they are not considered in the most rigorous program. And I would also like, not just looking at the past, but the AP program has been completely revamped. So the AP, you have AP and you have AP Capstone. There are different programs that might provide a better option than we had before. So if you're looking back at the AP program that was in existence 5 years ago before we moved to IB, that is not the same AP program that is in existence today. So I don't think it's just a historical view. I think we have to, as part of the analysis, look at what the alternatives would be if we decided to move away from the IB program, what AP looks like today, what AP Capstone involves, because there are different opportunities in terms of advanced placement in the school. And I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted
No, it's fine.
to point out the historical background, that there just weren't as many periods
That makes
where
sense.
students could avail
Well,
themselves.
Sarah,
And we're not trying,
no, please, then I want to come back to it.
we're not trying to put the program on trial now. We're trying to agree that we're going to discuss all the aspects and review where we are.
Yeah, I don't think
Because-
this is
Right.
about, if we get rid of the IB program, or
In the
if we get, or we
future.
go exclusively with the IB program, or frankly, we went back to a senior experience. I think it's theoretically, things are on the table for us to understand how they're functioning. I served as a associate director of admissions for a liberal arts college more than a few years ago. And you're correct, they did seek out, when evaluating a program, the degree to which students had taken the most rigorous program that was there. But I also know that it's different from college to college, and certainly large research institutions are going to spend a lot less time looking at those things than a smaller school that has a smaller applicant pool and can spend more time looking at the breadth of a student's background. And I think I'd like to see how a different range of schools look at those things. I think you can get a lot of information from those schools. We have spent a lot of time from this dais talking about how kids can get credit, how kids can be evaluated, how these programs work for their college applications. I'd like to, where numerical data is available, get it. And when anecdotal data is the best that we can do, I know for a fact that Chris is schooled in turning anecdotal data into the concrete through tools that I don't frankly have, but I know you do. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And the last thing I was going to mention is, sorry, pardon? Yeah, I know. I know you too. Because the note I had here was that we also need to think about this in terms of student wellness and their connection to the school. And racing for these top programs is laudable in many ways and is important, and certainly challenging programs are important. But for those students who are taking on too much or are risking their wellness or their well-being or their sleep or their well-roundedness or their ability to really understand what their own passions are because they think they have to be either in the IB candidate program or taking on a curriculum that is more challenging than maybe is best for their own sense of well-being, is something we need to spend a lot of time looking at. And I don't want to get lost in just chasing these college admissions, because our college admissions are fantastic. We've seen the reports, we see where kids are going, we see the admissions they're getting into, we see the great outcomes. It's literally on the screen when we walk into the building. But I think it's important for us to remember it's not just a game. It's not just a contest. It's not about getting the most points. It's about finding the right place and discovering who you are in your high school years, which only happen once.
And I'd like to follow up on that because I think that we have lost opportunity that we have to look at, lost opportunity costs that are lost.
Great. Sarah?
So I was going to say, the minor point is, I think we're going to find out that we have data that contradicts this idea of like the most rigorous program and where kids ended up going to school. But the bigger point was, to your point, that looking at AP and IB is going to intersect with these other goals of looking at engagement and inclusivity. These are the same ideas that we have to be concerned about the workload and the worth of that workload with the well-being of our kids, right? And this is not going to be any new rocket science. This is fairly well established.
I'm so glad both of you said that. And it also speaks to, we have to be really clear when we say analyze the effectiveness of these programs. How are we defining effectiveness? Are we
Right.
talking about effective in terms of meeting the learning outcomes of the content of the course? Are we talking about effective in terms of engagement? Are we talking about effective in terms of college resume? What exactly do we mean by effectiveness? And I'm not sure that we've even discussed that here. So if we're looking at, AP, IB, how are we moving forward, right? What are the benchmarks that we're even considering in terms of this?
Right. And I would like to talk about that too, because one of the things that the IB program does, and this is one thing I really want to look at, is how does it impact children in the math science continuum? Because it does, because of the 2-year course requirements and for the HL, impact the ability for students to take multiple courses, and sometimes it would force a student who is on a science track for engineering, in order to have the prerequisites to get into a Carnegie Mellon or a Rochester Institute of Technology or any of those places, to forego being in the IB diploma program. So that's an example of some of the opportunity cost. It's not the only example. Are students giving up instruments in order to participate in those programs? And the other thing that we have here, which I think we overlook, is there are so many opportunities now, especially with the online aspect of universities, for students to, if they're interested in college credit or a course that we don't offer here, to do that. How are we providing that that information to them? How are we getting that out to them? Is it getting out in a universal manner, or is it getting out on a very sporadic, individualized basis? Because there are excellent programs for students who we can't possibly meet the needs for, because we would not have enough to fill a classroom. And the other thing about the critical analysis, I would really like to talk about the impact on our faculty, on that these programs have, because as a result of the 2-year curriculum, you do have some particular classes where there would be 7 students in a class, and a Regents class would now have 28 students in it. It's, I think some of the faculty may feel that it's an unfair workload, and I also think we have to look at how that impacts our other student populations that are not enrolled in these programs. Are they now not getting the attention that they deserve because they're in a classroom with 28 or 30 kids for a Regents level physics or a Regents level chemistry class, whereas if you're in the IB physics class, maybe you're one of 7 students. And that falls into the equity part of our strategic plan. So I don't only want to look at the programs themselves. I do want to look at equity. I want to look not only at the students, but how it impacts our faculty and how they're able to reach students. And,
not just the program itself and not just those who participate in it. And really, I think at least at some point, are students somehow intimidated by enrolling in a 2-year curriculum? Would they be more likely, if you're a student that's not one of these top students who maybe has something they're interested in, would they stick their toe in the water and take like an AP American history course as opposed to an IB course, right? That's a 2-year curriculum. So I think there are a lot of different nuances that we're going to get into. It's not necessarily part of this, but I want to make sure that we're not just looking at this from a numbers perspective. Okay, how many got a 2 or a 3 or a 4 or a 5? But there are ripple effects about whatever we choose to do on the entire student population, not just those who have enrolled in those programs.
I love the idea of a good student and faculty survey to understand how our constituencies feel about it. And I would also just say one final piece of data I would like historically and then annually currently, the cost of the IB program. I'd like to know what those numbers are. Well, if AP, I don't think has too much of a cost going on, but certainly if there is any. And frankly, we're talking about AP and IB, but also there are also dual enrollment classes that we approved last year, programs we approved last year, and historically as well. Trustees, sorry.
Yeah,
Please.
can we open some windows? I don't think we have any HEPA filters running at all, do we?
Okay, open the window. It's beautiful out.
It's beautiful.
I'm actually really glad she got
Okay, other thoughts or comments on goals?
You know what, I just had one other thought. And again, I'm not sure if it's too specific, but in the student engagement and inclusion, I just want to make sure we're talking about general education students, special education students. I don't want to, miss that piece
Mhm.
as well.
Great. All right. Dr. Dolan?
Okay, I like, as I did last month, I've taken careful notes. I think I've heard what everybody has said. One note, when I prepared these, I was guided by 3 previous iterations, which were all 1 page.
Okay.
What we're going to add is really going to expand, and I think some of what we're talking about tonight is not goal, but method, strategy, technique even. Oh, not on? Better? Thank you very much. Thank you. I will do everything I can to capture all of this in succinct language, but it may require an additional sheet with strategies, goals, because I do hear what you want done. I don't know if that's a goal or a method.
I think their method, I was implying to be methods that we would record for posterity here and for work, but do not need to be on the goal sheet.
Got it. So
I would agree with that, except I would ask on the community outreach that we look for, that you modify that goal for continuous community engagement, not just in not just a variety of communications, but a variety of methods. That's not well worded, but I'll think about it.
And no, I think I got that one, and I do agree. A lot of what you said tonight will work its way into goals,
Yes.
but some of what I heard is more
It's
methods.
more methods.
Yes,
Okay.
specific
Much of what I
data
was talking
collection.
about at the
Understood.
higher level was more
Yes.
methods.
Exactly. I agree.
Okay. Trustees, you're good? Okay, thank you. We will now move on to comments from the public. I shared a lot of the details last time. We had a much larger audience, so now we are in a smaller room, and there are fewer of us. We're not going to hold as closely to the 3 minutes by counting, but we do generally want folks to be able to share what they have to say, be respectful of other people who are speaking, please, and to keep it brief so we can all have a chance and an opportunity. And with that, first come, first served, state your name and town of residence, and we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nicole Larkin, teacher here for 23 years and a parent. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I just sat for 40 minutes and listened to smart people problems. My son is going blind. He's been in district for 8 years now, and 6 of those years, the district has been out of compliance with his IEP, as they are right this second. Yesterday, he walked into his English class where there was no seat, no desk, because as Marianne said, there are 28 kids in the class, 15 IEPs, while there are 5 kids in an IB class. I cannot believe the last thing that Lisa said was kind of slip in the special ed. I would also like to mention special ed. 40 minutes I sat here listening about AB and IP problems when our most needy population is suffering. I'll say it officially for the minutes. They are the red-headed stepchildren of this district. And I don't care what I suffer as a teacher. I have always been an advocate for these kids. I was a blended teacher, a field teacher, but at least we were trying. When they, at least on the secondary level up here, it is a dumping ground. It's an afterthought. How dare my son be put in that situation? An English Regents class. Forget about adventuring to physics. How about learning to read on grade level? And he walks into a class that he doesn't even have a seat for. So the teacher has to give him her seat. My son has speech and language disorder, and he has an auditory processing disorder.
Ms. Logan, I don't want to interrupt you, but I think you know from last meetings previously, obviously, we know you're concerned. We share the concern.
No. I'm talking about the this is in addition.
But I just want to quickly just say my point. We really refrain from parents talking about specific IEP or issues with their children. It's really a violation of the kids' privacy, and we
It's
really
my
frown.
kid.
It doesn't matter.
This is the only way I feel. No disrespect. It's the only way I feel like I can get some attention. You know what my email said today? Kelly's issue from today. I have over 2,000 emails.
Have you reached out to Dr.
I
Dolan
have.
directly?
And I get a very polite response. My son has gotten hurt twice. Now we're getting physically hurt.
He's been hurt twice this year?
No, yes, last year in wrestling, and then he ran into the fire hydrant that is not functioning. 10 stitches in his knee. There's not even a flag on the fire hydrant now. There's nothing there to prevent it from happening again. Not even a cone on it. So I will just leave it at that. But I don't know how much longer I can do this. And being out of compliance, it doesn't matter. It doesn't. As a teacher, it matters. To the letter, I do the best I can. But for some reason, somebody's got to speak up and fight for these kids. And I can't believe I sat here for 40 minutes listening to smart people problems.
I agree.
It's
So
disgrace.
hold on. This is not a rally, and I want.
No,
And
I'm not either.
So,
I'm
Ms.
very
Logan,
emotional.
I understand
And I
that.
just want it on
I
record.
understand.
And that's it.
Obviously, we're all parents. It's hard not to feel what you're feeling.
It's a systemic problem in this.
But I also do want to say something as a representative of this board and the
Yes.
way that this board funds the special ed program. I'm just telling you, I do not agree with the principle that the special ed population is the redheaded stepchild of this district.
Do you have a special ed kid?
That
in
is not
district?
something that I'm going to discuss from this dais. But I will tell you this as someone who does, as part of this body, represent the spending of $114 million
That
on.
doesn't mean it's going to the kids. Come on.
But we
You
do,
throw money at a problem that doesn't cure the problem. I'm not here to get into an altercation
of
with you.
course not, of
And
course
I
not.
have a right to say
Yes,
that in my 23 years here,
yes.
it is a systemic problem. You can disagree. This is my position, my firsthand front lines, and now as a parent.
There is
It's true.
there is nothing
And I
about,
will be happy to give you.
there is
over
nothing about you
2,000
coming to that
emails.
dais that I am rejecting. I am glad you're here. I am glad you're sharing your story. People are invited to talk about what their concerns are. I am
Right.
glad you're here. I am
Right.
glad you're here. You also know that I have been to many of the SEPTA meetings through the years, and I've heard you speaking as well. it is a concern for this board. I don't
But
also,
where
But we didn't-
was
but-
that scene just now? I'm not going to argue with you. This is
but Ms. Larkin, again, I'm responding to you. I'd
Yes.
like you to let me respond to you. Is that fair?
well, I feel like you're being confrontational with me because you're upset at my comments.
I am not upset at your comments.
Okay.
I am upset to hear that a child's having a difficult experience. Of course. Of course, that's what's upsetting to me. It is not about the idea that you shouldn't be here or you shouldn't be saying
I didn't
this.
say that either. No, I'm saying that you're disagreeing with the comment. Just because you put money at a program
But-
does not mean it goes to all the kids equally.
So, well, let me just say one more thing. I'll turn it over to Dr. Dolan. I am disagreeing with your analysis of the overall special ed program. That does not mean that I'm arguing with you or getting confrontational. But I also, like you, am allowed to have a different approach to what I think the role of our district in special ed is. I don't think we spent the entire time at this meeting. This is my perspective. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying I disagree with you because I feel differently about it. Doesn't invalidate what you're saying. Doesn't mean you shouldn't be here. It just means that I have a different perspective, which in response to what you've said, I'd like to share, which is that we did talk a lot about equity for all of our students. When we talk about the goal, we talk about the idea that we want to think about all of our students, not just, I don't even like the phrase top and bottom. There are plenty of our special ed kids who are certainly at the top. And there are plenty of our kids who are non-classified who are certainly, I don't even like top and bottom. Every kid here is unique and has their own path. And that's the goal of what we're trying to do here, to bring out the best that each kid can do. I am clearly aware that you're, obviously, as you shared here, and as I know, very disappointed in what North Shore has done for your child, or I don't know if you have other children too, but at least this child. But I do also feel that the board does care and does try our best to do those things. And I know you disagree, and that's totally fair.
I didn't say you didn't care. I said my experience tonight was I sat and listened for 40 minutes about IB and AP kids' issues and how the colleges judge their classes and enrollment. When I know that we have children in, as Marianne said, in overcrowded classes, and it does tax the staff. That's all I said.
That's a good point.
So that's it.
Okay.
That's it. And why I highlighted my son's disabilities is because these masks are a physical barrier to his learning, because his speech and the reception that he doesn't have. So I just wanted it on the record that this is something that does get in the way of his learning. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I just want to say that's an additional issue that every day that he gets up, I feel like it's a rock fight, but he's like, he just rolls with it. He just rolls with, but he shouldn't have to. He shouldn't, and that's all. I did not mean for this to get confrontational or defensive. I just, after 8 years of going through it and now sitting here and experiencing that 40 minutes, I just felt compelled to stand up for these kids.
I appreciate that.
That's all.
I don't want to give Dr. Dolan a chance, but I appreciate that, and especially the ending. And I don't want to be, look, this is a place where everyone should feel comfortable to come and speak. And that's what we encourage. And if you watched our meetings, in no way was that in any way, shape, or form the roughest thing we're getting up here. So don't feel any way that was too much. Dr. Dolan?
Mrs. Larkin, I did get your email last night, and I know it went to several people. I happened to be the first one to see it and the first one to respond. And I know Mr. Contreras followed up with you today as well and I had no idea. The single issue that you brought to our attention yesterday was the overcrowded. Your son didn't have a seat. The class was overcrowded. But it sounds like there's so much more.
Oh my God.
Okay, and I don't know which building you're in, and I apologize that I don't know yet what building you teach in. I don't need to know tonight, but you heard what I said on opening day, and those were not just words. I'm going to follow up with you. I'm going to find a time to meet with you. I might not be the person who's going to have the best tools to assist you, but I'm going to make sure that we hear what you have to say, and I am concerned for what you said, not about what you said, but for what you said. And I will do everything I can to try to answer as many of those needs as I can. You'll hear from me by next Friday.
And Eric was great. He called me yesterday.
Yep.
Then another thing comes up today.
I had no idea.
It's a full-time job.
Honestly,
It's a full-time job making sure that this kid is safe.
when I spoke to Eric, it sounded like, good, okay, we got a desk. And that was the finite issue that I thought we had, but clearly there's more to that story, and I want to hear it.
Thank you. Comments from the public? Who would like to come up and share their thoughts?
I would like to say something.
If you do, just,
I actually can't
What?
walk right now properly, so I don't know if I can just stay kind of where I am.
the only problem is the meetings are live recorded, and so we want to capture what you have to say on the meeting. Is there a way for us to get a,
Does she want to use this one?
Yeah. is there a way? Yeah, you want to use that one? Andrew, you want to step up for a sec?
Thank you. Sorry, I'm just having a hard time walking, but I definitely wanted to.
I'm sorry, just one more thing. Just,
Oh,
just-
my name is
Yes,
Carly.
and town of residents. I'm sorry. Thank
My
you.
name is Carly Kalura, and I'm in Glen Head, and I have 3 students in the district in 3 schools, in the high school, the middle school, and in Glenwood Landing. And I just wanted to say that I am 110% with you. I feel your pain every day. If we're not going to fight for our child, then nobody is. And it is definitely a hard pill to swallow, to sit here and listen to the smart people problems. And I definitely wish that there was more of an outlet or an understanding for the children that have special needs. And I only have one child with special needs. I also have children that don't have special needs. So I understand that it's not all about them, but there isn't really much of an outlet or a place that we can turn to. I wish there was more, some sort of like an advocacy group in the district. But it's very upsetting, and I definitely feel your pain. And I just wanted to let you know that I stand by you.
Thank you, Carly. Also, SEPTA is a fantastic organization, and they are advocates. You should
Yes.
definitely. I mean, Nicole,
Yes.
I think you would agree with that.
It is.
Great, but it's not a priority in the community, which is the problem.
And I just feel like you can't understand. You're lucky, but you can't understand because you don't go through it. It's like saying to somebody that's very sick with cancer, or my sister has MS, and I say, I feel so bad. I know how you feel. And she says, no, but you don't know how I feel, because you can't actually understand unless you're in that position. But it's just something to think about. And just like you would fight for your child for whatever it is, that's what we're trying to do.
I agree with you that if we're not in that situation, we can't understand. But I also want to say that you coming here and sharing your experience, in some small way at least, does help us understand.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Ms. Clore, I hope you don't mind, but I'm going to use you as an expert witness now. So, and I think you know what I'm going to say. First of all, I'm just going to leave a statement, and without elaborating on it at all, to any parent who has a special education child. I do understand. Allow me to just leave it there. Okay. Ms. Kalura and I, in fact, have become close friends over the last 4 or 5 days. She and I had a long conversation. She was in Disney World at the time, I think, rubbing it in that I was still up here in New York. But I've become very involved with something that she's brought to my attention. And we've already had 3 or 4 phone calls, including one at 8 o'clock this Monday morning, just before an IEP meeting, a CSE meeting that took place. So I'm using Ms. Kalura, and I hope she doesn't mind, as evidence, Ms. Larkin, and anybody else out there who has a special education child who feels they haven't been listened to yet. I would hope to be that voice. And I don't know how I'll find that forum, but I will do my very best. I've already communicated with SEPTA, and I'll be at SEPTA meetings when I can. I do understand. And again, I'm going to leave it at that.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Dolan. I'd like to invite the next person who has a public comment to share. Let's come to the podium. Make sure the light is on. Name and town of residence, please.
Paul Pasculjan from Glen Head. I know you know me. First, I'd just like to say that I got here about 8 o'clock. I went to come in, and they told me the room was full, and I had to go to the cafeteria and wait until I could get into the room. But there was no streaming in the cafeteria, and then we were told to watch it on our phone. So I think you just have to, it feels as if there's a lot more of the community that's involved. And I think it's important that you provide the ability for people to attend and make sure that there's enough room for people who want to attend and speak to make it here. I wanted to talk about something that Dr. Dolan mentioned in the last meeting. He mentioned that the school enrollment was 2,463 students. Last year, according to Niche, enrollment was 2,618 students. That's a drop of about 150 students, maybe more, 5%. In the last 10 years, student enrollment has dropped in the North Shore School District by almost 20%. The budget increases every year. Dave, you mentioned that you're in manufacturing, right? I think of students as clients. If you lost 150 clients, 5% of your clients, what would you do? In the last 10 years, if you lost 20% of your clients, what would you be doing? I'll ask anybody here who's in any kind of business. If you lost that many clients, what would you be doing? I think it needs to be a recognition that something is happening here that you all are not recognizing. There's a reduction in the number of students. It continues. It's been happening for the last 10 years. And the cost just keeps going up. Something if you lost 150 students last year, and even if your student to teacher ratio is 9:1, then there should be some reduction in the cost or reassignment of that money. If this woman needs some things for special education, then how come we're not reassigning it to that? It just doesn't, something just doesn't seem right around the costing and the budgeting that goes on with this school district.
So I appreciate those comments. I'd have to see the numbers. The numbers, as Dr. Dolan reported, are up from the 2463. That was preliminary. And again, as someone who does sit in this seat, Paul, as you mentioned, being in business and sitting in this seat and overseeing an educational institution, I think to some degree you see parallels, but I think you also recognize the Paul. Paul.
I just have
Paul,
to say,
again,
I feel like it's a cop-out. It's a cop-out, man.
Paul, I sat there quietly. I let you finish, and now I'm responding. That's discourse. That's respect. That's how we speak to each other. Okay? That parallel has its limitations. I also know in my business, regardless of what my business is, I have obligations that are there. Salaries, land, overhead, utilities, etc., insurance, those things don't go down. I also know from my own personal experience, when I was growing up on a Long Island district, the enrollment went down, they closed 2 schools, and 6 years later, I was in a portable classroom because the enrollment went back up, and there was not proper heating. I had to walk through outside in the snow. This district has had, as we just learned when we were on our building tour this week, we have had times where Glen Head classes have been in the low teens, and we've had times when Glen Head Elementary School classes were in the mid to high 20s. It's cyclical, and when you're managing a district, not just for today, not just for people whose kids have gone here and they're done going to school and they don't need to use the schools anymore. You need to think about the long-term continuum of maintaining a district for the future and for the community.
And I
So I
appreciate
think that is the part that you're missing.
I appreciate that, but it's dropped 20% in the last 10 years.
I don't know that it has or hasn't, but I do know that it is in line with other districts. And I also know by any measure, this is a desirable district to live. There is no question that people want to live in North Shore. There's no question. You can ask any realtor, you can ask the people who are here. I'm quote unquote new to this town. I've only lived here for 15, 16 years, but I look around at the people I've made friends with here. So many of them are people who grew up here, who chose to stay here, who choose to raise their kids here. I'm looking at the people out in this audience, looking at the people on this board. These are people who stay in the community. The idea that somehow there's something wrong with this community and people are fleeing is inaccurate. And so the management of the district for the long haul is the plan and is the reason behind that. And so I understand what you're saying, but that's my response to it, and why I think we support the budgets that we have, which I believe have been responsible. Comments from the public. I assume people are here to speak, and I'm not going to pull people up, but we do have other stuff to do. So I would just, if you're here to speak, don't be shy.
Hi.
Hello. Just name and town of residence right into the mic.
So my name is Tracy Backer, and I live in Seacliff. I have 3 kids, 1 in the middle school and 2 at Seacliff Elementary. And it's funny because I had this whole fiery speech, but my heart is a little bit broken. I know we're not supposed to talk about our own students, but very quickly, my youngest is severely cognitively delayed, and he has epilepsy, and he's in, the ILC at Seacliff. And so far, I've had a wonderful experience. I will say he's in 1st grade, and it has been smooth sailing and really incredible. But, only certain people, I get it. And so my heart breaks for you. It's a struggle, absolutely, for those of us with special ed students. So I'm going to kind of scrap this. And I just really wanted to thank you all for working so tirelessly last year and this year to keep our kids safe. I mean, last year at Seacliff Elementary School, my kids were so happy. Like, my kindergartner started, and it was if, he didn't know any differently. He was wearing a mask, he was so happy. Every day during the summer, he asked, is there school today? Is there school today? Because he wanted so badly to come back. You guys have done an amazing job. I really, really want to thank you for following the recommendations of the overwhelming majority of the medical professionals and scientists across the world in mandating masks, not only to keep our kids safe, but to keep the rest of our community safe, and to keep the teachers safe and their family members and all of the staff. It was so disheartening at the last meeting. I walked out because I couldn't believe this was my community. I couldn't believe so many people had such a problem and were so opposed to keeping our community safe. That's what this is about. I hate wearing a mask. I have a panic attack disorder. This triggers it. I can't breathe. I get it. It's really, this isn't fun. My youngest has a terrible speech and language disorder, terrible. And he started kindergarten, getting all of these therapies without being able to see his teachers' faces. I get it. It stinks. But this is fleeting. This is a fleeting moment. We're in a global pandemic. We need to get past this to keep each other safe. And the way that we're going to do this is by following the guidance from all of the world's scientists. And then the sooner we all do this, the sooner we can go back to normal. Everyone can go back to normal. I just want to say one other thing. At the last meeting, a community member stood up and made a comment about programs that are being taught in the schools. And she kind of threw out a homophobic comment. And at that, many, many members in the auditorium cheered. They outright cheered. I almost cried. As somebody with members of the LGBT community in my own family, on this board, in our district, in that room, there were community members in that room who were gay, who were questioning their gender. And that comment, to hear people cheer, was horrifying. And so I want to make sure that the superintendent knows that this is not who the majority of us are. I am confident that the majority of people in our community are compassionate and accepting of everyone, whether you're socioeconomic status, your gender orientation, your sexual orientation, your race, your special needs. Like, the overwhelming majority of people in this community are kind and supportive and compassionate people. And can confidently say that the overwhelming majority of people would also support diversity and equity and inclusion practices in our schools. And what I mean by that is simply, I think there's so much media about this topic and it's so overblown. All that means is to encourage students to learn about their classmates and to learn more about their communities. All that means is to learn about, students' backgrounds that may be unfamiliar to them, maybe adding to the curriculum some texts from different cultures, that it provides a more dynamic learning environment. The diversity of experiences and perspectives and stories creates a well-rounded student. It creates a better community, it creates a better society, it creates hope for the future. So I'm just imploring the district to please foster this inclusiveness among everyone. Socioeconomic, special needs, gender identity, all of it. This
Thank you.
community is not what it seems like at this last meeting, and we could do a lot better. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Other folks who'd like to speak?
Hi, I'm Lisa Cashman from Seacliff. I also have a new middle schooler and a Seacliff third grader. I just wanted to briefly say thank you to you guys for serving also. I've been reading all over the news that not what we witnessed last week and what we're experiencing here at North Shore is not unique to us. It's going around in the nation, this divisiveness. I think that what I would love to see is a little more respect from the audience when other people are speaking. I mean, I was very moved by many of the speakers tonight, but I think it's really important if we're going to come together as a community for the kids, which is really why we're here tonight, that we please try and be respectful to everyone when they're speaking. And that's not what I've seen in the last 3 meetings that I've attended. There's a lot of side comments, there's a lot of muttering, there's a lot of bullying sounds, and it's really unfortunate because if we can't listen to each other, we really can't move forward. I wanted to also thank Marianne Russo for some of the comments she made, which I really want to echo about reaching out into the community and changing the narrative and finding ways to communicate differently, because what's going on now is not working, obviously. And to the extent that I can be helpful with that is what I want to offer, because I just hate to see what's been going on. I've been coming to these meetings for years, and the feeling was never like this. It always was, we're here to see what the board's doing. We're here to contribute. We're here to see how we can work together to make it better. And that's not what's going on in these rooms lately. It's we're here to judge. We're here to combat. We're here to point fingers, and it's just not gonna help. So that's the comment that I wanted to make tonight. And again, I really can't thank you enough, because I would not want to be sitting in your seats, but you've been so respectful to everybody, and thank you.
Hi, I'm Dionysios Vasilatos from Greenvale. 2 kids here in the school. Did you hear my name? Okay. Dionysios Vasilatos, Greenvale. Yeah, 2 kids in the elementary. I wasn't going to speak, but I know the last meeting was actually my first meeting. It was very passionate. I wasn't going to speak because I think my judgment is that it's best to just let things kind of relax a little bit. But the 2 speeches we just heard, I thought were ironically very divisive. I don't think we should be talking about other side of that very passionate topic as, not inclusive or, bigoted or, out of line in whatever way. I mean, let's just, tone it down a little bit. It's obviously things were discussed at the last meeting. that people feel very passionate about. I understand if you feel personally hurt, if people didn't agree, but thing that surprised me most, other than like, let's not be divisive by criticizing the other side at this point, and move forward. I suppose masks are here to stay. I didn't hear that word mentioned once here. It's, Dr. Dolan and I exchanged emails with you. I know you responded once, not the second time, but that's okay. We could talk about it afterwards. It's unfortunate. I don't know about the procedures that you all followed, but it occurs to me that, with the state mandate being what it is, that automatically seems to kick in. I mean, that's was there any independent review that happens from the board or the administration or your legal counsel to, certify it in some formal capacity, or does it just automatically kick in as some kind of policy state mandated?
Sorry, thank you, audience member who I happen to know. Thank you. We knew the specter of the mandate was likely. We had seen the news. We knew that when Cuomo announced his resignation, within days, Hochul said that was potentially the direction she was going to go. But I think it was important for this board to hear what people from the community had said at that meeting, which is why we didn't announce a policy before the last meeting. We wanted to hear what folks had said. We got a tremendous amount of correspondence by email. I did see one of your emails, which is how I remembered your name, because I didn't hear it the first time. But we also wanted to be clear that we were creating a policy in advance of the governor's mandate. This is our policy here in North Shore. And this is what, based on the feedback that we got, based on the Department of Health, based on the CDC, based on the preponderance of evidence that is out there, we felt was the right choice for North Shore. And it was not something that we are going to, quote unquote, hide behind. We think part of leadership is taking a stand and letting our community know where we feel we are as a board.
So you mentioned it's a policy. I'm just going to be specific about the word. It's a Board of Education policy.
It is an administration's recommendation that the board is comfortable accepting.
Okay. So it is not akin to, I remember last meeting you were talking about smoking as an example, which is actually codified in the policy manual. This is not something that has been codified in any formal capacity.
These are changing circumstances. With any luck, I mean, every county in New York is listed as a substantial or high risk county right now. But if that changes, certainly circumstances could change. I mean, some people may like wearing masks. I haven't met any, and I'm not one of them.
Okay, yeah. So it's fluid. I understand what you're saying. So other than the formality of our state government, Department of Health mandating it, it sounds as if procedurally, there's nothing that we have taken to affirm that mandate, that recommendation from the state, other than the pre-existing policy, or not policy, endorsed procedure that the board has endorsed and the administration has implemented. That's where you are. That's how it kind of went down.
I believe that the board has the authority to mandate these policies for our district. The fact that there's now a recommendation from the governor, which is a mandate, makes it to some degree a moot point. But
so I don't have the history of it, but just having looked a little bit at your policy manual and hearing the nuance of these terms, it feels as if maybe we ought to formalize whatever it is, because you talked about leadership. I think codifying a little bit more on something this significant, and making it a little bit more, I guess, solid in terms of our process is significant. Because otherwise, if we're treating it as a fluid changing condition that we're kind of certifying with this extra procedural method of an endorsed procedure, it doesn't feel like we're owning up to it as an institution.
We're owning up to it as an institution.
I understand.
This is the policy of the district as laid out in Dr. Dolan's email to the community.
Not a policy, though.
Would you call it? Is it a?
No, it's not a policy. We have a book this thick. If you haven't seen it, it's online. You can take a look at it.
I looked at it.
There's a copy laying on one of my desks. And it has policies. Certain policies are required by the state. Some are optional. It is not a policy that you will find in our policy book.
Yeah.
But I kind of like Mr. Ludmar's phrase. It's an endorsed procedure.
Right.
It was a recommendation that I made to the Board of Education that they endorsed.
Yeah. I think we're in procedural limbo. That's just my opinion. It feels a little bit circular, and that's antithetical to the notion of leadership that we're talking about from a formal process perspective.
I hear what you're saying. Again, I very respectfully disagree with that assessment, but it is very much your right to share that opinion from that podium.
Okay. All right. That's that. Glad
Thank you.
someone mentioned masks.
Are there other comments from the public?
Hi, Krista Alanya from Glen Head. I don't really have anything prepared. I wasn't.
I'm sorry, Kristen, just if you can get into the mic, and also, we do require the masks. Thank you.
Like 20 feet from everyone. It's just the game's getting a little extra lately. I wasn't planning on speaking, but somebody in this section here mentioned compassion and being compassionate, who also happens to be someone who wrote things on the internet about parents who fight for their children to take their masks off are asking for them to be sick and intubated. So I want to say to that person and everyone in this room, compassion needs to come from both sides of the field. And people who are fighting for their kids to take off their masks are doing it for a reason, not because we want them to get sick. It's not because we don't care about our kids. Our children are suffering in another way that maybe some kids aren't. And I don't think the board acknowledged that at all in the pathetic plan that was released. I don't. I think that in a compromise would have been they can take it off while they're seated at their desks. You guys did nothing different from last year except that they don't have to cohort anymore. It's honestly really disappointing, but I'm glad and I thank you for releasing that plan before the governor because now we see where you all stand. Something else was mentioned before that caught my attention. You said something about surveys and, you know, taking surveys from the students and the parents. We asked so many times for a survey and nothing was given to us. Okay. And it was, you know, it was left up to us to make these stupid petitions that, you know, obviously weren't even looked at. We know the majority of parents want parent choice. It's not about unmasking or masking. It's about parent choice. So if it comes down to having this option again in 90 days when this order expires, you need to give parents a choice because at some point this order is going to end from the governor. I believe it has a 90-day expiration before she needs to renew it. And it's so disturbing and disappointing. I can't even tell you how sick it makes me. What happened. You know, it's parents have religious beliefs, philosophical beliefs. Kids have medical conditions that are getting denied by a doctor that they're not allowed to speak to. It's private. His name is not allowed to be shared with the parent who's submitting the medical exemption. What is that? That's not transparent. There could be no doctor for all we know. It's a mystery man looking at our child's, you know, medical exemption. I'm not speaking from personal experience. I'm just saying what I've heard. From friends, various friends who've gone through the process, and I've been told that, you know, the medical director's name is not to be shared and information is not to be shared. So I think we need a little bit more transparency here. And I also want to say that I think that first of all we need to make sure that all the teachers are consistent. Children are allowed to take their masks off outside, correct? Okay, my son, my third grader, asked me today if he can stay home and homeschool. On the second day of school, half day, mind you, because his teacher yelled at him outside for taking his mask down, for having his mask here, okay? I was there, I witnessed it from about this distance. I was picking him up, and I saw him look up at her and went like this, and later on in the day, he cried to me for about an hour. Okay, he was reprimanded outside for having his mask down. Like, I can't even tell you how furious I am, how upset I am.
Yeah, I don't know the circumstances. Obviously, I wasn't there, but I would say that is not, from what you've told us, that is not the policy. The kids should be able to
and now he's afraid. He doesn't want to go back to school. He also told me he got not one mask break besides snack, and it's not acceptable. my son is a really good boy. He suffers in the mask. He has such anxiety. He has such emotional issues from it. And I told the teacher that before school started in an effort just to make her aware that if he needs a mask break, that, you know, it says in your policy, all mask breaks will be honored, right? It says that in some way. Well, you know, some kids don't feel comfortable and they don't know how to speak for themselves and they feel that pressure. And I've asked over and over again for teachers to be transparent with the kids and tell them you can take a break or it's time for a break or whatever for the kids that don't feel comfortable. And here we are with my son in 3rd grade who had a wonderful first day and on his 2nd day of school asked me to stay home. And it's not fair. Thank you.
Okay. I did have a couple questions because you have certainly, both at the podium and through email correspondence, made clear your position. And I will tell you, as I've corresponded with you, not the degree to which you have wanted, but we have been correspondents, I think it's fair to say, and that I have told you the board has read your emails. The board does read your emails. And I think that we have, certainly not to many people's satisfaction, but I think we have to some degree made changes from last year. 6 feet versus 3 feet is a big deal. It allows people to be in different places. Full sports with participation. I realize at the younger level that's much less of an issue. And there are some other ones I'm not thinking off top of my head. But I do think we have heard the choice discussion, and I understand the point that is made. And that was how I led off my thoughts at the last meeting. I do think that while listening is very important and sharing is important and coming to this podium is important, and being clear with the community from the administration's perspective is important, I do think there are some places where compromise may not be possible. And I think that the idea of masks on or forget about the governor's mandate, masks on or masks not on is not a place where we can have it both ways. If we are in a position where kids have their masks off within 3 feet, and those students not in school, those students are out in the world and they get sick, that will cause the closure of all the kids if we have those masks off. And therefore, our kids are not going to be able to be in school learning. And
So you're not making accommodations for children who can't medically tolerate masks because all the medicals are really being denied. Let's be honest. So
well, hold on.
The accommodations aren't being made. And if a parent is willing to keep their kid home in quarantine, if there's a case in their class, how is that impacting other children? It's not. They're still distanced.
It's not that there's state mandates, there are rules.
No, if you read the state mandate, you can take your mask off while you're distanced.
But if there is an exposure and a positive test, there will be a mandatory quarantine and closure, a mandatory one. That's not an option. I also would say, and this probably sounds like something I may end up saying more tonight, I do very respectfully disagree with what you're saying, that our medical exemptions are phantom doctors and that we're making up reports from these people. When you say, let's be real, I don't agree with that. I don't think that.
That's fine.
I don't think we would risk.
And if you can share their information, that would be great. Because I'm submitting for my son next week, and I want to be able to contact the doctor who's going to look at his medical information.
Dr. Dolan, can you tell us just a little bit more about how that process works?
Sure. We do have a medical director. He's real. I've spoken to him by telephone, and he has asked for his name and contact information not to be released because, frankly, he doesn't want to talk to parents individually.
Right.
I have followed up with him today. I've indicated that's becoming problematic. There have been 3 requests for medical exemptions. Those 3 have been denied. And I agree with you that I would love, nothing would make me happier than to be able to connect our physician with your physician. I don't know if that's something he's going to be willing to do. Thus far, I've heard no.
It should be policy for that to be done because any medical condition, whether it's anxiety or epilepsy or headaches or whatever it is, should be discussed with a child's physician, not from a piece of paper to a district doctor who's not having a discussion with the parent, the child's physician, and they're just making an arbitrary decision. I'm not fighting from the perspective, I haven't been denied, I haven't even submitted my son's yet because I was bullied last year into not trying to submit it. I was told by the nurse it'll never be accepted. And here we are again with my son having severe anxiety and issues from this, and I will submit it, and it probably will be denied, but it's not okay. I see this process and it's flawed, and you guys need to do something about it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Business. So when someone files
for an exemption, not necessarily a mask exemption, right? A medical exemption. Is the same procedure followed where our school physician does not talk to the child's physician? Because I do find that troubling.
I don't know. As everybody knows, I'm new. I don't know what the procedure was last year. This is a new physician, but I'll be happy to follow up on that.
I would really,
I would like to see some
like to know,
consistency.
because I would like to know if it's just for this issue, or is it for every issue? And if it is, I want to know the reason why. It really, I mean, just listening to it doesn't make sense to me, but I don't know if there's a valid reason behind it. So I'm glad you brought that up. And I would like to hear more on that topic at our next meeting.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. You coming yet? You're coming to go? Very good.
Claudia Paris, Glen Head. I sort of want to follow up on what was just said as far as parent choice. So move it more. Sorry. Parent choice. So we're dealing with masks right now. And obviously a decision has been made. Everybody's in here wearing masks. For me, the biggest picture, and what I lose sleep over every single night, is that these vaccines are going to be mandated for all of our children from birth. They're actually going to be set 2 years old through 18 years old. There is a bill right now. What is the name of the, do you have the name? If you can pull that up, Tony, just so that it can be on record. But it is on a desk for 2 to 18-year-olds to be mandatory vaccinated in order to attend school. Yes, we can all talk about anxiety and everything with these masks, but I do think that it's really important that every one of you up there starts really thinking about what your position is going to be, because it is going to come. I did speak with the superintendent right before I walked in, and I did ask what's going on with conversations with masks, and he revealed that at 4:29 today, they said that teachers now in New York State have to have the vaccine, or they can be tested every week. So yes, we're saying that's wonderful. They can be tested every week, but every single day, because we now live in the world of la la land, every single day, we're upping the ante. So today we have the choice and teachers can get that, but at different points, that's not going to be the case. So the Senator Hoylman, how do you say his name? Hoylman, confirmed yesterday that he's introducing a bill that mandates COVID-19 for children in New York State, and that will be for 2 to 8 years old. You can look it up. It is Bill S7320. I looked it up yesterday myself. It is on the desk. You all need to start thinking about it, because we can all sit here and we can all argue, and parents can say, we want the masks, we don't want the masks, but I can bet almost anything that there are going to be a lot more parents and a lot louder parents that are going to say, I am not injecting my 4-year-old kindergartner with a medication. So I'm just suggesting that you all have conversations about this, because we have a very strong likelihood that we're moving toward that, and it could potentially happen. So that's all I wanted to say today.
Thank you. Yeah, please.
Did I hear Mrs. Karras? Thank you, Mrs. Paris. That bill was brought to my attention also, and I appreciate your suggestion that we have a conversation. And if I may offer a suggestion back, I'm certain that your senator would want to know how you feel. And as much as this board may be called upon at some point to make a decision about that, I'm big on making those phone calls, and I think you also know that I've been engaged in advocacy already this year. I know Senator Gorin, not sure if that's your senator or not, but I know that he would be interested in hearing.
Okay, I do appreciate that. I also do just want to add that we do live in New York State, and one of the most liberal states in the country. And in California, the very first public school did begin to require vaccinations for students. It was the very first one. It was done this past week. So I just need to say that phone calls, and I've made lots of phone calls, phone calls can be made, but it's communities that create change.
Okay.
So,
Understood.
Please.
Hi, good evening. Rena Gerasi from Glenhead. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but just a couple of topics came up that I think I need to address. I'd like to piggyback off Kristen and also confirm that when I picked up my two sons today from the school, they were both wearing their mask outside. Some teachers weren't, I must say. So when I asked my son, why are you still wearing a mask? He said that they weren't allowed to take it out, even though they were outside, because they weren't socially distanced. So I just want to verify that. So immediately, once the child was received to me, I removed his mask and the children went and played at the playground with 30 other kids, no mask. But past that border.
I don't want to interrupt you, but
Okay.
this is good feedback. I'm glad you're sharing it. Go on.
So someone had mentioned that they were just appalled by last week's meeting and everyone voicing their opinion the way that they have. And there's this premise of the people requesting a choice on the mask are not wanting to keep their community safe. And I think that that's very harsh language and very inaccurate language that we're using here. I would like to remind everyone that Laura Curran announced about 2 weeks ago that there's an 85% vaccination rate in Nassau County. We're number 3 in the state. I work in healthcare, and I've said that, the most vulnerable population, the people who are trying to protect, have already been able to be vaccinated. And I know because I work in home care and I deal with geriatric patients every single day. And what I'm struggling with, and I always try to see everyone's perspective, just because sometimes maybe I'm not correct. And I like to draw a conclusion based off hearing and understanding the full perspective, the full circle of a story. So I'm going to be perfectly honest. After the mandate request or policy came out, I was very upset that it mimicked very closely to what we had instituted last year. So my husband and I, knowing this, had started touring other schools, other school districts, private, parochial, everything out there. And our first question was their mask mandate policy. And I encountered a handful, I'm not going to say which schools because I don't want to put them on blast, but they were both public and private, many that, although they had a mask policy, children were either able to remove their mask completely while they were in the classroom, or some just didn't, they said they had a mask policy, but they just didn't institute it. And I had asked them, every single one, what was the outcome? Were you guys remote last year? Were you not? Every single one said they had one outbreak, especially one. They said they had one outbreak, and that was because a teacher was exposed to someone during Christmas break. So it wasn't even a teacher who had caught it. It was, they were exposed to someone. So to be safe, they had shut down, I think, in January for 5 days. So for me, and I want to remind everyone, I'm the one who said that my children were part of a first responders program where they were there for 10 hours a day, 5 days a week, no masks at the height of the pandemic. So for me personally, I'm just really struggling, and I'm all about protecting my community. Trust me, I deal with geriatric patients every single day. I am gloved up, goggled up, masked up, because I want to protect the most vulnerable people, and I'm there to help them 100%. I'll be the first advocate for them, and as I am an advocate for them every single day of my life. But what I'm struggling with is that it was okay for my children back then, at the height of the pandemic, where we had patients die every single day off our census. It was okay for them to not wear a mask, but now all of a sudden they're being forced to, or at least they're not being allowed to have it off at their desk, when there's other school districts that are actually mandating the mask, but they're allowing the children to take it off. So I don't think that it's that we don't want to keep our community safe. I'm just trying to understand the logic behind it. So that's one thing I wanted to say. And to be perfectly honest, one school did mention that one administrator who said that he was going to implement a mask mandate for the school year, a private school. He did say that the reason was once the children once they go mask optional and someone gets diagnosed with a positive COVID without a mask, that entire classroom has to shut down. So for him, it wasn't worth it. Now I understand that and I respect that. And I get from an administrative standpoint why he would choose that. Our board did not communicate the reasoning behind that. We're talking about transparency. I keep hearing a conversation over transparency. If you articulate and explain to us the reason why there's a decision being made, I think you'll have a better, the community won't be so appalled or up in arms. I don't agree with the policy, but I understand how it's a more simplistic approach, and I get it. So I just wanted to make that comment as well. And that's that.
Thank you.
I would like to say something in response to that. That is part of the reasoning. And I really felt bad that I did not communicate that at the last meeting, and I've been thinking about it at this meeting. The problem is, and Dr. Dolan, correct me if I'm wrong, is that when there is a positive case, the Department of Health looks at what guidelines you have in place.
Mm-hmm.
And they look at how many feet apart the desks are. Are you cohorting? Are there masks on? Do you have filtration?
Right.
And all of that goes into who has to be quarantined. And what's happening across the country in other parts of the United States where there are no masks in place, it's not even the number of students or teachers who are sick, but the number of students and teachers who have to quarantine.
Right.
And in some parts of the country, schools have had to close because they do not have sufficient staff. They do not have sufficient teachers. So yes, that is part of the equation, because even if you didn't have a mask mandate, or even if it were lifted, if you do get a positive case, it does go into the number of people who have to quarantine. So I think that's a very salient point, because I think no matter which side of this equation you are on, I hate to use the term side, but I think the goal for everyone here, no matter whether you want mask optional or you believe they should be on all the time, the goal of this board and the goal, I think, of all parents is to keep their children in school, right? You want to keep your children in school. And that one of the ways we keep the schools open, we didn't have to shut down any school at any time. We had those kids in here every day, K through 8. One of the ways we were able to do that was having those precautions in place. So even if you don't think they're effective, they do go to whether your child can have in-person learning. And we all know that the CDC recommends, and all the articles that all of you have sent me, which I have read all of them, and the petitions and everything you sent, the goal of everyone here and the recommendation is to keep kids in school, because that is such a better way for our children to learn. And that is part of the reasoning, and we should have articulated that better.
And guess what? I think if parents understood that position, you maybe would have not had such a massive divide in this community. I only had that explained to me by an administrator, by a private school, because the last time how everything transpired, my husband and I were distraught. I went home that night. My husband's like, we're leaving. We called the realtor the next day. We started touring schools. And, I came here for the school district, as you mentioned. My children found out who their school teacher was the next year, and they were elated. They got the teachers that they hoped for. And I think that if it's the lesser of two evils, I understand your reasoning. But for us, and I think the large majority of us, and I've discussed this with even our school principal, is that our voices we feel. And maybe because it is a lack of communication. I mean, I think this is like the first time I've seen the board kind of take a position on anything, right? So I think that we feel that our voices are not being heard, and that, you know, we're this like thorn on the side, or this, you know, the squeaky wheel, and it shouldn't be, because we're contributing members to this community, and we should be able to have adult conversations and share a perspective and be and have a respect for each other. And I think that there's a lot of animosity going on online. It's very toxic, and it's disheartening. And I think that at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the board to make sure that the community comes together. And I think that communication, as you had mentioned earlier, is what's going to get you there. And a lot of what the families think, and I believe too, I knew that this bill was coming up. It's not going to pass when, you know, Congress goes and Senate goes into session this week, because they're going in for other stuff. But I guarantee you it's going to pass come January. And the majority of the parents feel that, you know, we see that kids have been okay without the mask. And I understand that you have to shut down because of protocol. I get that. But my kids were okay that entire time. Other school districts were very loose and lax with their mask policy, although they say they had a mask policy, and they were very loose with it, and they were fine, and children were okay, and there was no deaths and no hospitalizations and no none of that. So we're led to believe that the reason why that this is being pushed forward is because that there's an ulterior motive here, and the ulterior motive is to push this vaccine on our children. Everyone's allowed to have their choice, but, you know, so I don't want to be put in a position where I'm forced to do something against my will. And that's where we stand. So I think this is where you're seeing a lot of the animosity come. And I think the lack of understanding from a certain group of people as well.
That helps. And it helps us to understand that as well. I was not heretofore aware of this bill. And I don't know anything about it because you just mentioned it right now. I mean, the vaccine hasn't even been approved for under 12. So it's news to me. But when that
I have news for you. The vaccine has only been FDA approved for children above 16 years old. However, they're advertising it for children 12 to 15, and it's inaccurate information. It's true. Look at it. CDC.
It has only been approved
For 16 and up,
16 and
not 12 to
over by the FDA
by
for
the
use.
FDA.
By the
And
FDA. yes.
it has been approved, I think, for 12 to 16, not by the FDA, but on an emergency basis.
Yeah, it has
And
an
there are
EUA on
children
it.
who have
Correct. It
who
has
have,
an EUA.
issues, medical issues, where they have been receiving the vaccine.
Yeah.
Well,
I believe that's true.
any 12-year-old is eligible for the vaccine.
It hasn't been FDA approved for
It
12.
hasn't been FDA approved, but
Therefore,
It's only
it
been
can't be-
FDA
Everyone
approved
who's
for
12 and
that's
over
what
is
I
eligible.
think you
It can't
said.
be mandated for 12 to 15 because it's not FDA approved. It could be
Right, and
mandated
that's
above
Any
16.
not full
vaccine
FDA
and
approval.
mandate, I have no opinion.
No,
The board
I'm
has no opinion.
This is the conversations that are happening. This is why people are getting frustrated. I'm just bringing things to people's
Okay.
attention. That's all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Roger Friedman, Seacliff. Just a point of clarification. It's approved by the FDA for emergency use.
Emergency, but it hasn't
For 12.
received full FDA approval. I
No,
think
no,
that's
right,
what the
but-
lady was.
right, it's-
I'm sorry,
yeah.
I don't remember your name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I
an
know what
emergency.
you meant.
Well, hold on.
Right.
Let's keep it to the public commenter, and then we can, yeah, please.
Says my daughter, who is 14, got the vaccine. It's approved for anybody who wants it, who is
12 and over.
12 and over. Right, correct. Gosh, I don't know where to begin. I think I'm going to begin with, yes, this is very divisive, and we do need to come together as a community. I think that's very important. And we need to really hear what everybody is saying. And I hear the mask choice people. I'm not in that camp, but I hear what they're saying. And I imagine, and I guess I'm not, this is sort of a rhetorical, that if hypothetically, if there were, if the CDC were to say, for instance, if your community is, again, I'm not quoting any specific numbers, 90% vaccinated, all the adults are vaccinated, 85% of the kids are vaccinated, and community spread is very low, so we think that masks can come off in the classroom, I imagine that would be something the board would consider.
I mean, it's a hypothetical, but I will tell you in general, there is, as far as I have seen on this board, there is no desire for lifetime masking. There's no desire for us all to go to the end wearing these masks.
Yeah, feeling is mutual. So I actually, I just want to say, I did some research because there's a lot of stuff said last week and data presented as scientific studies presented to the board in the form of a 12 or 14-page document with a whole bunch of different links to different studies. And I took the time with two research MDs, one research MD who's also a PhD, to go through all of the studies. And I'm not going to go one by one because it would take too long, but I do have a document that I would love to share with anybody who's interested, and I'll share it with the board. Suffice to say that a lot of the studies were quoted out of context and in fact do support mask use as a way to prevent the spread of COVID and other infectious diseases. Another fact that was, another statistic that was, or concern that was raised was that masks expose children to dangerous levels of carbon monoxide. And that is also not true. Carbon dioxide is much too small to be trapped inside your mask and recirculated inside your body. In terms of, and much of the data was, somebody also said that only 100 kids had died from COVID and 188 kids had died from the flu. However, that data was from March, sometime in 2020, and the actual numbers were up to 430 pediatric deaths from COVID. Delta seems to be exacerbating that significantly. And there was only one case of pediatric death from flu last year, most probably because of all the mask wearing or social distancing. So I think it's just important to keep in mind that, of course, we all want our kids to be safe, and nobody wants to expose their kids to harm. But this variant seems to be more dangerous. We are lucky that we live in a place where there's, 85% of the adults are vaccinated. And that, quite frankly, is protecting a lot of the children in this district. Whereas, we see what's happening in other states. I mean, thousands of children and teachers are already in quarantine in places without mask mandates. And the other thing I'll say is that mortality is not the only negative outcome for kids. Long COVID has been also been reported among kids, and that's a real serious concern because we have no idea what the effects of that will be. And one study in particular that was misquoted was a study that was printed in on the JAMA network. And one of our the doctors, local doctors in the neighborhood, wrote to the researcher, and I'll just read you the emails. Dear Dr. Guy, as you may be aware, a prior article of yours has been picked up and cherry-picked by anti-mask, anti-vaccine advocates as evidence that masks are not effective. This is being used as evidence in school board meetings to not require mask use or to support school choice. Do you happen to have a statement to refute the interpretation of your data that you can share? And the line from the text in the report that was sent to the board was, because the percentage point decreases for mask mandates and increases for on-premises dining refer to changes in daily growth rates. Changes over time amplify exponentially, and these measures could result in averting a substantial number of COVID-19 cases and deaths. So that's exactly what he says. He says, thank you for your email and interest in this study. Our study found that mask mandates were associated with decreases in county-level daily COVID-19 case and death growth rates. Mask mandates were associated with a 0.5 percentage point decrease in daily COVID-19 case growth rates 1 to 20 days after implementation, and decreases of 1.1, 1.5, 1.7, and 1.8 percentage points 21 to 40, 41 to 60, 61 to 80, and 81 to 100 days, respectively. Because the percentage point decreases refer to changes in daily growth rates, changes over time amplify exponentially, and these measures could result in averting a substantial number of COVID-19 cases and deaths. Several articles have been posted to help clarify the key results, and he's including one here. So, and I'm really happy to share this with anybody and to make it available to the board as well. In terms of the another thing that was talked about was the diversity and equity and inclusion program, or I don't even know if there is a program. And also somebody mentioned critical race theory and that they don't want it taught to our kids. I'm fairly certain that critical race theory is not being taught in this district because it's a college level course from what I understand. But I do think that we should consider as a community teaching some of this stuff to the parents. Because it would be very important for us to know what it is before we rail against it. And so that's just, I'll leave that there. And
Thank you, Roger.
Sorry?
Sorry.
Okay. And I always enjoy hearing from Paul Piskuljan. I know his enrollment figure was, he quoted the preliminary enrollment figure, but he may not be seeing the absolute plethora of strollers and young families moving into the neighborhoods that may not have kids coming into the district yet. And I appreciate your taking the long-term view and preserving this, what has been built here by generations and generations of school boards and teachers and the community at large who have supported this incredible institution that we have. I know, no institution is perfect, especially one with 800 plus employees and 2,600 students. But I think in general, we are a phenomenal district. Lastly, I just would put out to the community that I once this vaccine is FDA approved, I mean, I'm fairly certain that we have to vaccinate our kids against other viruses like measles and mumps and rubella and chicken pox, for instance, is a requirement before coming to school. And I think that's the only way we ever get out of this. I don't know. It's one man's opinion. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Roger. Other folks who'd like to contribute?
Did you forget your pen? Okay. I'm Lauren Grella from Glen Cove. Just a quick thing to touch on because I have elementary school age kids. But I hear you guys talking a lot about AP classes and all of that and student well-being, workload, engagement, all of that. It sounds like maybe these kids are under too much pressure. There also was not any mention made of the parents. And like, we're still responsible for raising our kids, for helping them balance workload, life load, all of that. AP, of course, is not for everybody. And I think that the board has not once mentioned parent feedback in terms of those things. These kids are definitely overwhelmed. It's like, we're overwhelmed. You probably get emails till midnight. We're all supposed to answer them because our phones are available. My husband does construction. He gets emails, calls on 6 a.m. on a Sunday. I mean, people are not supposed to be working these hours. So I think our children aren't engaged potentially because they're overworked. I was a very average student. It's fine. Okay. I mean, pushing college courses, I just go to college for that. Anyway, really quick, I just want clarification on, again, the elementary level. What is the rule in terms of the snack eating in the classroom and how many kids can eat at a time? Do they have to be separated? I'm confused. So if you could clarify that, I would appreciate it because I know that your outline, Dr. Dolan, had said cafeterias will be utilized, which alludes me to think children will be eating lunch together at the same time. So can you just break that down if you don't mind?
Sure, I'll try. I don't have the plan in front of me, but as I recall, anytime students are eating, which would include snack time, we're supposed to be mask off, obviously, because they're reading, and 6 feet of distance because their masks are off. What we're doing to accommodate that at lunchtime is we're splitting kids up such that some are eating in the classroom, some are in the cafeteria so that we can maintain that 6 feet of distance.
Okay. And now, does that go for outside? If the kids have their mask off outside, are they supposed to be 6 feet apart?
If kids are outside, no, masks can come off when kids go outside.
Okay.
And I've heard several people express a concern about that tonight, and I'll be communicating that.
Yeah,
it's
there
all been
definitely
from one
seems to be a
building.
disconnect in terms of that they still have to be that, the distance.
I'll do my very best to clear it up, and it's, it's day 2, and I'm sure there's been some growing pains.
It's also very clear from certain teachers, not that I'm not naming any particular, just there seems to be an inconsistency in terms of, again, mask breaks. Like you write in an outline for the parents that they're welcome, they'll be permitted, all of that. Again, my kids came home, they said they were not entitled to any mask breaks except if they were eating. One of my children said they have to eat one at a time at their chunk of desks or whatever. He's very unclear about what this classroom looks like. I'm sure it's lovely, but it just doesn't make sense. So now one kid's eating and everyone else is watching him eat. My son loves to eat. He was really pissed about all of this. It just, I don't get it. I don't get it. If the separate them then, sit them all over the classroom. But like the rotation of the eating, first of all, just shortens the mask break for everybody. And I would imagine snack takes like a ridiculous amount of time at that point. So just some inconsistencies about that. If you could follow up. Thanks, Dr. Dolan.
Can I also just respond? Every year we try to go through the 1 or 2 analyses of the academic program or of the program in general. So this year we are focusing on AP and IB. In the past, we have focused on foreign language. We focused on athletics. So it does rotate, and this happens to be the year for that. But the 4th, we didn't go through the goals. Maybe we should have a little bit more. Goal 1, which just the reality is a very large goal for the district, is to search for and appoint a permanent superintendent. So that's going to take up a lot of our time. So we are only doing the 1 academic study this year. But I should also mention that goal 4, which is student engagement and inclusion, very much will be focusing on the well-being of the K through 12 student, and the pressure that you feel and the pressure the parents feel correspondingly is a huge part of that. And we have noted that the amount of time that these kids spend trying to build more flexibility into the K through 5 schedule, because sometimes it can feel like you're in a bit of a race, and it's about like a slalom race, about going through your gates and skiing. Not that I do that, but I've seen it on TV. And that if you miss a gate, suddenly you're out of the race. That is not the way we approach it. And I think it's important to do these studies to find out if the way we want to approach it is actually the way that we are implementing it in conjunction with best practices. So that's what that study is. It's not just the APIB, but yeah.
The first meeting I ever came to was in May, because I honestly had this delusion of grandeur that I could send my kids to public school and like go for lunch and go to the gym. I'm not ashamed to say it.
Mm-hmm.
So nonetheless, we all learn. Okay. I was shocked.
We look forward to the kids going back to school.
I know.
So
So I was shocked to see the results of that survey that was that like so many, and the numbers get higher in middle school and high school, or maybe you only surveyed the high schoolers, but how many like didn't feel included. And student engagement is a word I've heard 3,000 times in these meetings. It's disappointing. It's like disheartening. Not that I'm disappointed. The district, they're my kid, like I said, they're elementary school, but that was shocking for me, because I am someone who came to North Shore and thought, it was all cupcakes and rainbows. That was really like sad to hear. And I think that if kids don't feel included, I don't think it's necessarily, I think parents are still responsible, and maybe there can be more coordination with parents, especially at the older level. I don't know. I feel like the board wants to raise our kids when they're in school, and then what we do at home turns out to be like, I don't know. There seems to be a disconnect.
I hear what you're saying. I think there are cupcakes and rainbows here, but it sure isn't all cupcakes and rainbows. Yeah. And I think the fact that we talked about those things and we did that equity study, and the reality is we do the Bach-Harrison study, we do other studies to determine the degree to which our students are engaged. Because as you've been to these meetings, you've heard student engagement, connection to their school is their number one predictor of not just academic success, but their mental well-being, their emotional well-being.
I also think parents don't know that much what goes on here. Like I've heard, my daughter's 4, but I've heard, the girls tell you more. I guess I'll find out. My sons tell me very little. It's only complaints. I don't know sometimes, I'd like to think that the school should stick to academics.
And then there are social and emotional issues that like certain kids are ready to receive at different times. And that's definitely more of an elementary school thing. You know, my kids are not ready to learn about sex, that I could tell you. But others, maybe, mine will just never stop talking about it, and then we'll be kicked out of places. It would be a whole thing. So I think that you know, that's where it's not like, I don't think anyone's anti, you know, critical race theory. To me, it has nothing to do. It's not about equality. My children treat everybody this, but understanding certain things and certain graphic things and certain, it's too much. Like, consider the parents more, is really the moral of my story.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay. How are the numbers? How are we looking? Okay, so why don't we close two? We'll see where it takes us. Okay.
Hot flashes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Just
Hi.
name and town of residence, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Denise Miller from Glen Head. Tonight, I will be asking you to do something for your district. I want you to think about what we are all going through, each and every one of us. It doesn't matter where we all stand politically. Politics and children, in my head, they don't mix. We have become divided as a community, and I'm sure that this cannot only exist on the outside of our school buildings. With that said, we all have something in common that we may not have been thinking about. We all came here for the same reasons, for this district. I don't want to speak for everyone, but for many or most, we trust that our children will receive an outstanding education here. One of the biggest questions I have as a concerned parent is about the changes that are being made. For instance, the curriculum. How will the masks affect them? How will the knowledge of knowing about the threat of this virus affect them? How does that translate for a young child? How does that translate for a teen or a young adult? Depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation currently stands at an all-time high. I can only imagine what all of this feels like in their innocent little hearts and minds. What this world must look like to them. Has any one of you thought about addressing us as a community and how this has affected us all psychologically? I pose this question. To put it in place, for instance, as a program to support our children, the parents, and survivors. To have trained staff on post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, social phobias, and as you can imagine, the list goes on. Seeking help from a mental health professional can be very costly. I would like to propose the idea that a program be considered, even if short-lived, to help our kids and our families, to ensure our children are emotionally sound, and that their families are coping well with the current conditions of the world, and now, unfortunately, a divided community. Last, I would like to say that strong leadership is needed now more than ever, and our community is divided. But we need to heal. There is pain and suffering, so please acknowledge your role here. To bring us together as a community and to help us cope in providing the appropriate resources. Unity can be everything. If we stand together, we can heal. So please, let's change the dialogue, restore unity in our community, be the best role models we can be for our children. Please don't forget, leadership is everything, but unity heals. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Please.
A little bit taller. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, just right in there. Name and town of residence, please.
Natalie Zarisky, Seacliff. And I want to follow up because I agree 100% with the last comments. I think all the parents who've come up here, we're advocating for our children. That's the whole point. And I want to thank you for giving us the space to do that and for hearing us. And we're going to disagree. We are, about school lunches, about all of those things. I agree that there's a certain amount of civility that needs to happen. Those of us who want masks in the school, who have advocated for that, we're also advocating for our children. And I think that that needs to be said. I work at a university. It is 100% vaccine eligible. You have to have a vaccine to attend university, and you have to mask up. We wear our masks all day long. Our students wear their mask all day long. Now, these are not second graders and third graders. These are 18-year-olds through, 80-year-olds. But the point is, even with the vaccine to be on campus, we're concerned. We want to keep that community safe. And that's part of what informs me and my advocacy for my son. So I want to be transparent. When I'm talking about what I need my kid, the space to make it safe, that's where I'm coming from. I want him to be safe. I want him to be happy. And I don't want to wear masks for the rest of my life. I don't want him to have to wear them for the rest of his life. That's it. That's all I want to say.
Thank you. Other folks who would like to participate, please.
Christy Willis, Seacliff. I just want to offer food for thought. I am a teacher, though not in district, a neighboring district. I teach at the middle school level. And it feels to me like I could be reading through the lines here, but I think I have it. I want to offer you not a blanket reassurance policy, but I want to say something from the other side of the desk, because when I'm sitting there, I'm with you. But when I go into my classroom, and I've been teaching for 22 years, so I'm pretty well rooted in the 7th grade. I've been doing it for a while. I want you to just know that maybe they're putting up a brave face at school. It might be that. It might be that they're trying to be brave. And when they get home to you, that's where their safe place is to lose it. I just want to let you know that yesterday, for the first time since March 12th of 2020, I had to kind of fight back tears because it felt like I had my kids back. I walked into a full, bustling, excited building, and as a teacher, to have my kids back in front of me, even with our masks on, I can't quite describe it. After the year that we had last year, which felt a lot, we tried to be good teachers, but it was hard. That technology that separated us from our students did not make teaching feel like any of our heart could be put into it. I just want you parents to know that when they are with us, we're watching their eyes now more than ever. And I can't speak for every teacher, and some of the inconsistencies that you're seeing among teachers, please know, the same way if you took a poll of this room, you're probably going to get a whole varying level of sensitivities to mask wearing versus not. Teachers are people too, and are experiencing various levels of sensitivity. Some are completely paranoid if a child takes it off a second too soon. Some are a little bit more okay with that. There's a whole continuum. That said, we certainly have our directives and we are doing our very best. Please understand it's the second day of school. Some of us haven't even established our routines yet. So please just, I'm not saying not to email us, but please know we have our eyes on them. We have their best interest in heart. Please know that. Nobody gets into this business for any other reason that they love children. And I love 12 and 13-year-olds, and that's saying something. I've been doing, I'm in the 7th grade for 22 years, and I still love them. I couldn't wait for that first bell. I was more nervous than they are. 22 years later, I had the first day of school jitters. So I just want you to know, during the day, they appear to be more okay than this conversation might make it seem. I don't see anyone, at least in the first 2 days, though we did it last year. If I see suffering, I will make that accommodation. But for the most part, I saw a classroom yesterday and again today that were just as excited to be back in the building as their teachers were. So I want you to know that, are the masks hard? Yes, I don't love them. I would be more than happy to put my collection in the fireplace and get rid of them. I do think they get that it's a necessary evil right now, not forever, as you reference. I certainly can't wait for this to not be necessary either. But I do think the students understand that, okay, in order for me to get to school, I just have to do this. We get a break at lunch, we get a break in the morning, we get a break. They seem to understand that we are in this together. So I just want to reassure you that they're doing a great job with it. They are. Maybe they are struggling when they get home and they see you, but they are doing a wonderful job on the other side of the classroom door.
Thank you. And I appreciate everyone who spoke, but it is certainly helpful to hear, to be reminded of the teachers. I remember when our kids were first sent home in March of 2020. Feels like a lifetime ago, and they were not able to come back until, and we had a series of teacher parades put on by the teachers. And I remember remarking to the previous superintendent at the time, I can't really tell if this is more for the well-being of the students or for the teachers, and who needs to parse that, because it's necessary for everyone, that connection, the way they feel. But speaking to teaching as a special type of profession, I'm glad you did. Thank you. Are there other folks who are, please? It is, but we just Bill, real quick if you can. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Walking away, I realized that I would have been happier if I just gave it a shot and asked you if you can give me some feedback on the proposal that I made as far as placing a program within the school that would support on a completely different level psychologically, other than having your school psychologist and your case social workers and counselors in place as we do. I'm grateful for that, but I'm curious to know if there's any flexibility or any funds, or if you would take even donations from parents that are willing to put in place the right professionals, mental health professionals, to really just sit with the kids, even if it's like a once a week or a once a month program where they sit together in groups and they learn about how to cope with such trauma.
So first of all, you are absolutely correct. This is traumatic. This is traumatic for kids, traumatic for adults, traumatic. I mean, everybody. We're all going through something that is
single person.
Every single
on the
person. I spoke
globe.
about what
On
Dr.
the globe.
Dolan mentioned our
Right, on the globe.
our building tour,
Yes.
and we were talking about this is, and I spoke about this is easily the biggest crisis in public education in the lifetimes of anyone who's worked in public education, in part because it's every kid K through 12. It's every parent. It's every cousin, aunt, uncle, sibling, grocer, everyone.
Every home.
Every home
Every
on the
home.
planet. On the planet.
Yeah.
And I think that should be. I think that's very
As
important
a professional
to
in the
acknowledge.
field,
Mhm.
as a professional in the field of psychology, I thought that this would be something, if I needed to reach out to anyone specifically, I actually have put down a little, idea of what that can look like. I've been in the field of psychology for 21 years, in private practice in Great Neck for 21 years. I've worked with families directly as a specialist in family therapy. So I understand the dynamic, like what can happen within a home, especially like, for instance, during remote, and what that can look like, right? And what can happen to teens, especially when they're isolated and they're not socializing and they're not interacting, or even for the young children. And then for couples, where right now the rate, as far as divorce or separation or the fighting or the,
Yeah, and you didn't even mention economic hardship. You didn't mention the fact that there has been people have died. People
Yeah, I
have
was
lost
gonna say
in our
even-
community, in every
I was- right.
community.
I was
Yeah.
going to say even the bereavement or even like
Mhm.
a loss financially. There's
Mhm.
been so much that we've all gone through. And of course, we all individually went through our own individual hardship with this. But we do have a commonality, which is the trauma.
Yeah, and to
right?
some degree, the shared experience could be a point for us to come together and
Right.
to unify. And I like that concept.
Right.
I don't want to speak specifically about it or put Dr. Dolan on the spot, but one thing we talked about was recognizing the difficulty that students are having. We talked about it under the context of students who do have difficulty tolerating masks, and focusing on that and making sure that we pay the proper focus on those kids, so those kids are focused. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
But Dave, also the wellness committee, there's been a lot of what she's suggesting you already have in place. I don't know if Chris wants to speak about it.
Is your
but-
finger on the button, Chris? Sorry.
No, thank you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Dr. Zublionis is the,
Me and Chris, actually, Mr. Zublionis, have already discussed in conversation, actually, some concerns that I already had as far as what this can look like for the kids, and yeah.
So we do every district receive grant funding for COVID, mainly for the purpose of direct services for kids. So we are dedicating a lot of that funding to extra social workers. We are working with a consultant that we worked through with last year. That would be more for adult programming and also for teachers. We also have consultant counselors. So we are in the process of coordinating all of that, but
Yeah.
I'd be certainly happy to speak with you more about
Yeah.
your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think my one concern is that they are trained, not that they're not trained in a multitude, because psychotherapy and psychiatry today, it's an umbrella. Like there's we're all taking a piece of that pie right now, right? There's so many people in that field. But when it comes to a pandemic and a crisis, a global crisis as we've all experienced, trauma and post-traumatic stress disorder and training in that is specialized and specific. So if you're interested in that, I can definitely, we can reach out to each other and discuss that further and how that can look or get integrated into what you already have in place.
Yeah, I think that's a
But
good,
post-traumatic stress in general, if you did any research, I'm sure you don't need to do too much. We'll understand what happens, but it doesn't just stick around short term. It's something that can last a lifetime. And so I think it's really important to, especially for the young, even middle school, even the high schoolers, we're talking about even the staff, right? Even the staff, we're talking about every single one of us, that even parents that are going through it and don't have where to go, if it's a support group within our community, and if you need any of us as professionals to volunteer and be part of that support group.
I think also the building level parent organizations are also a good place for that also, because there is a way to come together as a
Say that
community.
again?
The parent level community organizations, the PTOs, the SCAs, because that's a shared experience that we have. But I think you should get in touch with Dr. Z, and
Yes.
I am glad you came back up.
Yeah.
And we covered it, but
I just wanted to say one last thing. I wanted to say that also I think that the temperature, of the last meeting, it was pretty heated.
Mhm.
And I really do wish that we can also take into serious consideration that if we don't tone down that temperature between the sides, when somebody said they didn't like saying it, and I agree with you. I hate to use that for lack of a better word, but if we can tone down that temperature and we can use just unify in some way as much as we can, agree to disagree, and understand that it all comes down to just what's in the best interest of our children. That in itself, we have to understand, actually does continue to affect them as well. Because I'm a mom that no matter how much I can try to, not include or not share certain things and protect my little one from, I think there's a certain amount of energy and a certain amount of information that I can't protect him from. So he will be exposed to that regardless. And he knows all about the virus. He knows all about all the things, So no matter how much you can try to put them in this little bubble, the real world is the real world. And at some point they're going to hear it, and that will affect them. So I think the better we work together, even on a psychological level, really making sure that they're emotionally sound and the community gets supported as well.
Mhm.
I think then, we'll do even better going forward
Thank
for
you.
them, even if it's to be okay with the masks, although we're not okay with, some of us aren't. I'm saying in general, just to how to cope with a lot of different things that we have no control over. That also in itself right now can play a really big role in helping us moving forward with things we can't control yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there other folks who would like to speak who haven't? Because we're going to move on to our regular business. If not, no, we want to, it's public comment for here in person. All right. Okay. I am not seeing any hands, so I'm going to close public comment. I appreciate everyone coming. The board does appreciate people coming here. Some people I've seen as frequent flyers. Some people are new, and it is really great to have this discourse, and I'm glad you all came. Thank you. Okay. So we will move on to action item 8, which is various personnel actions. Is there a motion on action 8? And I hear a second. Okay, any questions or comments? All right, all in favor of approving action item 8?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Action 9, which is the approval of community education instructors. Is there a motion? And I heard a second as well. Any questions or comments on the community ed? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. I will put actions 10, the approval of the 21-22 organizational chart, and action 11, which is the approval of a resolution regarding ballots together. Is there a motion on 10 and 11 together?
Motion.
And a second? Any questions on 10 and 11? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Action 12, which is the approval of a claims audit report for July 21. Is there a motion? Thank you, Trustee Galati. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Trustee McCary. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Action item 13, which is the adoption of the revised policy 1120 and 1120R, which we discussed at the last meeting. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second? Any questions or comments?
I have one
Okay.
small one. And thank you for all the work that went into those revisions. I don't have it in front of me, but I believe we discussed that we accept the FOIA request by email in addition to in writing, and I didn't see that change made it into the revision. If I'm mistaken, I apologize.
Actually, what we did, upon advice of counsel, was we indicated that we would follow all the applicable FOIL laws. So that captured a lot of the items that had been mentioned without having to itemize them, including a question that was raised about fees as well. Whatever fees are applicable.
Yes, and I saw that, but I
Yep.
really did feel like it still said in writing.
I do have it. Let me take a look.
I did add that, Sarah, and what happened was, I think when James sent it back, he sent it back from his original, but I had originally put email in there, because I did have that from yours. So I'll put that back in.
Okay.
Amend it because
That seems like a, yeah,
It's in, yeah,
When I sent it back to James about the
yes.
request,
it just, yeah.
I think he used what he had before, which didn't have that addition that I put in.
It's Roman numeral 3. I bet you know where it is. Yes, exactly.
In person or by mail, and I put by mail or by email. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that's exactly what happened.
So make a motion to amend the policy, Sarah. We'll vote on the motion, and then we'll approve the policy as amended.
So moved.
Yes. So I'm gonna.
Second it.
Thank you.
Betty, that's kosher? Okay.
We have to vote on it.
Yeah, so now so now we have a motion, we have a second. We're gonna vote
On the motion
on.
to amend.
Well, any questions or comments on the amendment, first of all, just make sure it's clear for everyone? Sure.
Roman numeral 3.
Roman numeral 3.
Arabic numeral 3.
Arabic number 3.
Okay.
Request to inspect or secure copies of records shall be submitted in writing, either in person, by mail, or via email.
Which we did discuss at the initial hearing last time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the motion on the floor is to amend this in exactly that
Thank
way.
you. Yep. Thank you.
And by exactly, I mean you'll put the comma in the right place. If I didn't pause in the right place. Any other questions on the amendment? Okay, all in favor of amending? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments on the amended resolution? Okay, all in favor as amended? Aye. All right, everyone, well done. Action 14, which is the approval of our superintendent search firm, which is going to be School Leadership LLC. Is there a motion
Motion.
and a second? Any questions or comments?
I do want to make a comment. So when we talk about our goal and when we talk about of getting a new superintendent and when we talk about approving a search firm, the search firm will lay out for the community exactly the process. So we will come back to the community with a discussion about how the process what the process will look like so that the community is aware of it. This is just obtaining them and the process will be determined in conjunction with the search firm.
That is well said. And just to build upon that, I think I speak for the board in saying that the presentation by this firm of the way and the degree to which they would involve the community in helping to understand the profile that we are seeking in the next superintendent was one of the factors that was very important to us. And so we're looking forward not just to informing them, as Marianne said, but also to working with them in helping to understand what this community as a whole is looking for in our next permanent superintendent. So just making that comment. Any other questions or comments on that, on the search firm? All right, all in favor of school leadership being appointed? Contract.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. What I will do is we will, now that this is set, we will work on getting a initial meeting on the calendar very shortly. I'll work, Betty, thank you in advance. I'll work with Betty to coordinate with trustees and the, what, you guys all right? Sorry. Okay. Now, guys, sorry. Getting something on the calendar so we can all work with them and have that initial meeting, which will primarily scope out the timeline and lay out parts of the process. So we're working on goal 1. Action item 15, which is an approval of an agreement with the memorandum, approval of a memorandum of agreement and amendment with Savin Engineers, who is our construction management firm. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second? Any questions or comments on 7? All right, all in favor? I look forward to continuing to work with them. Actions 16 and 17 I'd like to combine. This is the award of several 4 purchase contracts and also the award for printing services. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second? All right, any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Action 18, which is the approval of agreement with North Shore and Hofstra. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And I heard a second as well. Any questions or comments?
We should just probably explain what this is.
All right, I'm pulling it up so I can do it exactly properly.
It's our internship program.
Yep. Chris, you want to just briefly give a summary?
Sure. So for several years now, we've had a special internship program with Hofstra University that provides for student teaching placements for students at Hofstra, and then an internship for the second half of the year. Other districts involved are districts like Herrick's, and we've had a lot of great success in finding future teachers through the program. And the internship part, they work with the building principal to act as TAs, to then find interest in their something in their degree area to help the school, and they have a project that they have to complete for the benefit of the students in that school also.
Thank you. I just want the community to know.
That's great. And very well said, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, all in favor? Aye. I'd like to combine actions 19 and 20, which is the approval of special education consultant agreements with 2 providers, and also the approval of a selection of IEPs for our students. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Actions 21 and 22, even though it's a secret resolution, I can combine those, Betty? All right, we'll combine Action 21, which is the approval of a secret resolution for a tent rental project, and Action 22, which is the approval of a lease agreement for tents at the middle school. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. This is on 21 and 22. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Yeah, I had a question.
Please.
Sorry, go Lisa, go ahead.
Oh, Lisa, please. I'm sorry. I don't know if you're on. Just get right in there.
When we were doing the tour the other day, I thought it was mentioned that we were getting a 50 by 100 tent at the middle school, and the one at the high school is 40 by 100. But I think this one said 40 by 100 for the middle school, and I might have misheard, but
No, that's what I heard too.
wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
We may have misspoken the numbers. What I think we said was it was the same tent as the high school, but the man in the booth, John Hall, could probably
he's still there.
answer more specifically.
So I'll pile on with my question too, which is it the same as the high school? Because it sounds like it's a tent with sides, given the fire extinguisher and exit sign.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
This is the esteemed John Hall, Director of Buildings and Grounds, class of, oh no, we won't give your full CV.
He's now worked for 7,200 hours straight.
Yes.
Yes. You clean up nice after what I can only imagine, the mud and the water.
Right. I apologize for the confusion. It seems that they told us it was a 50 by 100, but when we got the lease agreement, it is indeed a 40 by 100, which is equal to the big tent at the high school. So it was just from what the middle school administration had shared with us and their encounter with the vendor and what he actually put on the paper. So I apologize for the discrepancy, but
Is it an enclosed tent with sides?
well, it's the same one as the courtyard one. Here, the sides are there for rainy days. They're not fully enclosed sides, so they do let ventilation through and air through when they are down. But they're primarily up, like you see the tent here, when weather is favorable.
I didn't
Thank
even
you.
realize it had sides. So the sides were up.
I've never seen the sides,
Oh,
right?
The sides are rolled up
They're rolled
right
up.
now, and then if the weather is rain like the other day, we wouldn't be out there anyway. But if it's raining lightly and they prefer the sides to be down, or if wind happens to be, they can close one side. It gives them those options.
But even that rain that we had last night, this high school tent was up.
Yeah, they're not like the canopies we put up on the facilities with
No, they have
my
those serious
staff.
anchors,
It's weighted with hundreds of pounds of blocking, and these guys do this for a living. It's there. So
Thus the secret, as
Gotcha.
opposed to the canopies that don't need it, because that's considered a permanent structure.
it's the size that really drives the permitting
Like,
process. If
yeah.
it's under a certain size, we don't need a permit.
Okay.
Yeah, just a quick
Yeah,
question to
please.
John, just out of curiosity. How did this giant tent do in the rain?
Oh, they did well. We have the 40 by 100 there. We have the smaller 20 by 50 here, and they did fine. It wasn't that windy, and they're pitched enough to allow the water to shed, so they did well.
Great. Other questions, trustees? All right, thank you, John Hall. All in favor of 21 and 22 actions? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We now come to board committee reports. Who would like to report on a board committee? I know we had construction steering.
I was driving to a court hearing, so I wasn't able to take notes while I was driving. So if someone else could do it, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, so
Not all the committees met, so.
not
Yeah.
all the committees met.
No, it was the last. We were really doing an update. A lot of it was around the EPC and the construction work and where we were on the construction work going on. I mean, that obviously is going to be most of our focus
Yes.
going forward.
Yes, and as Dr. Dolan spoke about in his superintendent's report, some of the delays that we had due to supply chain issues and getting the schools ready, we talked about. We still talked about the challenges of filtration and air filtration in the large spaces, which is still something that we're working on.
And in all the spaces, right? The balancing report that they're going through
Yep.
now still to see where we are. But the large spaces are a challenge.
Yep. I think because it's ongoing business, we can probably leave it there, and we'll cover an update after the next one at the next meeting. Is that fine with everyone?
That works. Hopefully, I won't be driving.
Okay, good.
Maybe Lisa will
Very
take
good.
it.
Any other committees meet? Okay, so I will move on to old business. Any old business?
I guess I'm curious about an update on the interview process for the psychology position, if there's any.
We are still screening resumes. It's tough to find the caliber of the person we're looking for. So we are screening resumes. I might repost it to bring in a richer pool.
Would we consider, if that isn't satisfactory, the search that you're doing, would you consider bringing back to the board reinstating an assistant director of special ed at the elementary level? Because I think that's part of what spurred this process, was the vacancy in that position.
I think of my memory, I mean, I don't
Given
want
the
to speak.
pause, let me jump
Given
in.
the pause.
And it's an easy one for me because I was not here for the previous discussion. So I'm happy to weigh in. And I will certainly talk to Chris and take a look at what we have. If we can't fill the position, if we don't find an appropriate candidate, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board somehow. And I wouldn't rule anything out.
Right, because we have to fill the gap. So
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's the end all, the be all, the
Agreed.
answer, but I think if we're not, one of the reasons why we're at this point was the search from the last time to fill that position.
Mhm.
Right.
So if neither of these are really working for us, then we have to figure something out, right?
Yep.
And I think this might dovetail with the other conversation we need to have, which is about what the board's going to be discussing throughout the year.
Yes, thank
And
you.
I think the board could know more about like the structure of the department and what would be ideal there and what the challenges are, and a more top level view than just, seeing the IEPs and the contracts. I think that might be something. Andrea.
Yeah,
think
no,
wants
I
to
agree.
say
I was going to
something
bring it
better
up
about that.
I was going to bring it up in new business, and this idea that I think we need to see what the process is from identification to assessment to intervention, all of the services and like tracking the process, right? A teacher notices a problem, a parent has a problem. How does that child get from point A to point Z by the time they graduate? And I think that would help the community understand how to get help for their children. And I think it helps the board understand the process because it is complex, right? There's lots of different people who are involved. And then I think it also will help us understand why kids are slipping through the cracks, why so many parents have come and expressed frustration over what they view to be a lack of attention to their child. I want to make sure that we solve whatever disconnects are going on.
Because there's some stuff that I think we hear sort of somewhat consistently over the years, like issues around scheduling the services their kids need. I'm looking at Marianne because I'm just be like, have you been hearing what I've been hearing? And feeling like, what the process is where teachers find out what IEPs say, or, 504 plans, et cetera, like,
I think
how
we're-
and when all of that happens so that people feel comfortable that these things are all happening, right?
Right, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you had looked at me. So I think where that is really happens a lot is when they hit the middle school and the high school. So what I frequently hear, and of course this is hearsay, and I think our special education department is wonderful. They do a great job, and I do feel that we're committed to providing an appropriate education for every child as a board. But I do hear frequently when the kids hit the middle school and the high school and they have multiple teachers, that not every teacher is familiar with the IEP, and that the IEP is not followed consistently in every classroom. So I think that is where I hear a lot of the implementation issues. The diagnosis part is a whole, different animal depending upon the IEP and when it's being noticed and what the process is, the evaluation process. That's a whole nother animal. But, what I really do hear is that not all teachers are as familiar with the child's IEP, and that there could be inconsistencies in implementation.
And I think the other board level piece is we know what resources we've budgeted for and what personnel we have, but we don't really know how all of those resources get deployed to really help as many people as possible, which I think speaks to some of what we heard during public comment, right? Like, how does that translate into people being helped, to just in a very basic way? And we really haven't seen any data either about how many people are asking for services or applying for 504s versus what the end result is.
So I do not mean to push the conversation along, and we'll stay as long as you want, but it sounds like we're starting to talk about some of the topics for discussion for the year, which Andrea already introduced the topic new business. So I don't know if that would be, what I'm hearing is that that might be a topic for discussion, that overview, that A through Z, analysis of what that process is, along with some statistical analysis of, referral rates and where they end up and an overview of it. That would be part of it. I think then the second part of it would be implementation.
Correct.
Okay, so here's the plan. Here's A through Z. Here's how it works. Here's where the pitfalls are. And
Right. The organizational level.
We're asking for a lot.
I see it as two separate
Right.
topics.
It is and it isn't, because the way the organizational structure of who the psychologists report to really does dictate who they service, right? So you want your psychologist to service not just the children who are identified, but also the general education students, right? Because we're looking to provide as much intervention as we can to prevent the need for classification later on, right? So we want to know, I'm curious to know, how are we identifying them? What tools are we using? Because it's all about the early identification in these children. And then once you do identify a problem, what are we doing before we classify? What happens when you classify? And then how does that progress as the child progresses through the educational system?
We are absolutely saying the same thing.
Okay.
I see one as the organizational overview for everybody to understand, and don't forget, not just the board, but our audience to understand the big picture of special education. But then the implementation I see is just as important and something that would be of even more value to our community hearing how it works. So I'm playing with these, and I will, get a draft to the board, but I'm beginning to listen about board topics, and that might end up being two separate ones.
Okay.
And if we wanted to combine them, we could, but I'm hearing two, and honestly, I think the first conversation informs the second. So just a thought, and we'll see where this goes.
And as related to that and to what we heard tonight, and we have heard before, and what in part I think spurred some of the thoughts of reorganizing the position is how parents have a communication, have a pipeline with the district to be able to discuss issues as they arise. That communication between the special ed community and the district, and how to and at least what the proper protocols are and what areas need to be potentially focused on. Okay. So I'm not sure where we are, but that's an update on that.
I know. I'm
And that's an
happy
update on
we got
other,
there.
yeah. Is there any other old business before we move into the new business aspects? Okay, we're going to move into new business. Do we want to talk about topics for discussion, or you want to give an overview?
That is a piece of new business I would hope to get some feedback on tonight.
Great.
But if there are other topics, I can certainly be patient.
I mean,
Let's start there. 'Cause
we'll
we're-
start with the topics. I'm assuming we will still do the student achievement
I hope
presentation.
so. Yes. Yep.
That seems important.
So wait, student achievement or student recognition?
Student achievement.
We have the two student achieve. Don't we have two student achievements on there?
There
already?
is a discussion of student achievement that was done last year in January. Well, and again, not having been here for that, it was a discussion, district report on student achievement, but in two specific areas, K-12 humanities.
We used to do it broken by building. Now we're doing it more by discipline.
Got it.
We did do that by discipline. I'm not sure that I like that better than by building. Except that it did alleviate people being here multiple nights, which I'm sure they were happy about. My
personal take on it is, I agree with you. I don't know which one's better, so I think we can leave it. In my opinion, leave it to the administrators to figure out the best way to do this.
Yeah.
You can even come up with a new way if you want.
Right.
Yes.
We're but it does seem to take 2 evenings, right? It's
Right.
a lot of data. The board's very interested in the data. But if you wish I think we're open to how you wish to divide it up.
Okay.
And I'm curious how that's going
Thematically
to
or
be
building
done.
level.
You will
Because of the lack of standardized testing the past 2 years
That's
now, right?
Yes.
So you missed it the spring of 2020, and we didn't have a lot in the spring of 2021. So I guess we'll be looking at the STAR assessments and whatever there is out there and whatever. I don't know what other information you're going to be able to gather, because much of this discussion has always centered around what is easily accessible data. Not that it's solely on that.
I felt like we don't focus on that though. I feel that a lot of times we really add like the rich experiences. That
No, we do, but there is a whole portion that has the data.
I think just for
Those
Dr.
bars.
Dolan's kind of edification on this, when I first started on the board, when I first started in the audience, it was very data driven. We would go through specific classes, specific disciplines.
Standardized tests.
Yes, then we migrated more towards that being in the backup because it matters and it's important, but that we talked more about how we as North Shore measure student achievement. One way is standardized testing and all the rest of those things. But one way also is student engagement, student adherence to SVOs, and we heard a lot from the faculty on that and the building leaders on that as well. The qualitative side, but the quantitative side was important also, although good point,
It's
Mary
really,
Ann,
going
you
to
know,
be
there is a
hard,
match.
and I don't
Yeah.
mean that should drive the whole discussion. It just was always traditionally part of the discussion, and now we're in a little paradigm here, right? So maybe the discussion will be more on, because I know, Chris, you've worked so hard on this part, and we've dedicated part of our grants for that is learning loss and what we're doing to close that gap.
And on the flip side, we now have a lot of data on the social emotional side, right? Like in the 4 years since Dr. Melnick left, right? We have our own equity study. We have 2 Bach Harrisons. We might have the old Pride survey. We have the Challenge Success survey.
Yeah.
There is a lot of data on some things, even though it's not the AP test scores.
Yeah, I was just going to add that I think what's been helpful the last couple of years is categories of how we're looking at student growth, comparative data, looking at achievement in terms of extracurriculars as well. So what data do we have to still support some of those categories and maybe some others, I think is what we'll look at. And it might be more local assessments. We certainly have the STARS
Right.
information. We do have some ELA and math 3 through 8 and some regions, but the participation in the spring was very inconsistent. So,
Yeah, I'm
to your
not even
point.
sure I really like even taking that data into account. I've been skeptical about it for years since the opt-out rates have been so high. And I know like we sort of surmise where they are, but that really doesn't feel very evidentiary to me. It sounds like we're, to make those kind of assumptions. And I think last year and, 2020, we didn't have them, right? In 2021, we had a very low participation rate, and the state didn't even mandate we give all of them, right?
Yeah.
So I don't even know if that data is in any way valuable, but you'll make that assessment.
That's what I'd like to
I
propose.
will.
I'm going to leave 2 meetings on here, probably December and January, on this district report on student achievement. Let Chris and I have a conversation about it, join with some other people, some of the other directors, and we will come up with a plan. It might not be a new way. It might not be a new way, but we will figure out some way to do it.
I think just because we're talking about student engagement in the equity study, I think that's a lens that should be focused on this year as well. Cross sections of our populations, how they across the board, how they all do. I thought Dr. Smythe did a really good job of connecting the limited data to our overall population that did give it some value. But again, I'm not staring at you, but the ball's in your court.
It's funny you mentioned that we did from the Teaching and Learning Committee. One of the recommendations was for Dr. Smythe to re-up that study again. So we should have some of that data.
Terrific. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Dolan. Dr. Zublionis.
We could use a couple of more topics. There are a number that fill in readily: budget time and superintendent's budget and probationary review. I see a number of them that are on here.
And some of them do tend to present themselves as the year goes on.
I did have a thought.
Yes.
One of our goals this year is community engagement. I don't think it'd be a bad idea to reinstitute a non-budget season town hall to have a conversation with our community about their concerns and budgeting and misconceptions and all that.
Well, we did put something on the calendar this
There's
year.
a budget boot camp in.
Yeah,
I'll
we
tell you
have budget
exactly
boot
when.
camp, which.
Okay.
January, I think it's January.
Yep. What Olivia and I envision is before the budget is formed to talk to people about what goes into building a school budget,
Mhm.
real boot camp.
January
we will not be
27th.
debating, line items at that point, but we will be talking to people about fixed costs and, what some of the budget lines mean. That would certainly be an opportunity to engage with the community, and early enough, before I finish that sentence, early enough that we could certainly seek some additional direction on priorities for the budget.
But we used to have a town hall meeting once in the fall and once in the spring. And there was no set agenda other than, the usual things, the superintendent's report, the approval of the minutes, and the action items. But there was no discussion items, and it was left to the community to come forward with their discussion items. The reason why they were eliminated was we had very poor community representation. People that actually didn't come out, and we were just looking at each other. We seem to have solved that problem this year.
Yep. Good job.
So, so that's really kind of I feel like Abe Lincoln, like I'm the historian. But
No, I agree, but I think if our goal is to re-engage people, it might be a way to see if we're having any success at it, to bring people out before the calendar
So
year
what's
ends.
the difference though between having the town hall versus the public comments? There's more.
There's not.
There
I mean,
isn't.
we
Okay.
called it a town hall to try and explicitly say to people, please come and speak about any topic rather than, people feeling like it had to be a topic on the agenda. We don't. That doesn't
Can I
seem to
give
be
an
a
add-
current issue, but it's still welcoming nonetheless to call it.
there were other boards. Again, I'm like the old lady here. I'm in a wheelchair at the next meeting. There were other boards that were not as open on public comment, and the public comment had to relate to the topics that the board was discussing, which was within their purview. I mean, under the open meeting
public
laws,
comment-
we're allowed to
Yeah.
determine how we want to conduct. We don't even have
Or not to have it at
public
all,
comment.
exactly.
So we're allowed to do what we want, but when public comment wasn't so expansive, they had the town hall meetings. Or the idea was that sometimes the public comment occurred so late that people felt, I remember going with Mikey asleep in my arms in the Glen Head, school, waiting for public comment to come, and it happened at 11 o'clock at night. So the idea was that people didn't have to wait through a long discussion item, and they could get there early, bring up whatever they wanted, and they'd have to wait to 10, 11 o'clock at night.
And I think another difference is we can be proactive about soliciting participation.
Can I suggest an out of the box idea? You're probably all going to shoot me down, but I'm going to say it. What if we did a town hall, but it was geared to students, where students were able to come and talk about whatever they wanted to talk about, and they had the floor?
I mean, it could be a town hall open to anyone, even if you just explicitly add if you're clear that you intend for it to be open to students as well. If you let students go first, right, the whole thing.
And we're trying to engage, who are we trying to engage, right? I love the idea of students, and we should do that too, but we also want to engage maybe the people who don't have children in the schools. I was thinking, I wonder how can we get people, like, what can we give them? Like, is there a speaker we can get that would entice them to come? But I don't know if that.
But we're talking about something that's going to be an agenda item, right?
It would be, instead of a discussion item, like tonight we talked about goals, the only thing we would have would be town hall. And I think we could say to people, look, we always have public comment, but tonight is strictly a night where we are, yes, we'll do business later, but the main purpose of this meeting tonight is to bring in people from the community, because one of our goals this year is to, improve relations between the board, between the school and folks who don't feel confident with what we're doing or have concerns or don't feel like they're heard. Let's bring people in.
But you could do both. You could do
Yeah,
both
sure.
and use Andrea's idea. What you could do is make a push in the schools.
Yeah.
And have the principals announce, especially at the high school students have a lot to say.
So
And you could
yeah.
make a push and have, and the SGO could make a push at the high school level for students to come and raise their issues of concern. And you could give them priority to speak first. There's a way to combine both. Students have come and spoken at meetings. But if we could make an extra effort to reach out to them. I don't think it's I think it's a good idea.
I
And I
agree.
think we can do it.
I agree. I'd love to hear from students. I'd love to hear from the civics. I'd love to hear from CASA. I'd love to hear from a lot of community groups that don't always come participate and actively, hear what they have to say. I think we could learn a lot by listening. I learned a lot tonight.
Another topic I think we have to talk about is we have to have some discussion item on what we want LAC to do. So we sent out the brochure, right? And they're
It's
going.
good. It'll be out in a few. Hopefully, it'll be hit the boxes next week.
Okay, so that's
This is it.
that was it. So it's coming out, right? So we need to talk about what we, if we're going to form this again, what we want LAC to be focusing
Can
on.
we do that as like just a bullet under old business next time so it doesn't get,
We could do that, but it's
Pushed
just
off.
something I don't want to lose sight of.
yeah, exactly. And we've done that before. It's like, it's old business, but we go ahead and bullet it so that we don't not do it and people remember to think
Yep.
about it ahead of time and just next meeting, let's go ahead and.
Mm-hmm.
Again, sorry that I wasn't here for last year, but I have a question on one of the goals that we established was a critical analysis of the instructional program. We talked at great length about IP, AB, and other college earning programs. Would that be a topic that I should inject somewhere in this calendar?
Oh, absolutely. I just assumed that was going in the
Yeah.
calendar.
Got it. Wanted to make sure.
That should be its own night.
I would agree.
That should be its own night, because
Which we
that's a
assume
big
won't be
topic.
soon because
What?
we have to do it.
Next
I mean, if
Thursday.
you're ready to talk, okay. I thought what a sooner topic might possibly be had to do with the goal about, equity and inclusion, that we might need a discussion sooner rather than later about where all this committee work is that's been going on with the strategic plan that we've now had for a few years, like hearing some kind of formal report and some thoughts on like, what can we go ahead and do?
That was a topic last year in March. I could certainly inject that somewhere in here, but I would like to talk to the board leadership about a thought that Chris and I had of having some conversation about that beforehand at the board retreat. Because I think one of the people that we're talking to would like to talk to the board first and gather information from the board on direction. So I would make that a little later in the year and hopefully engage with the board early in the year.
Do we have a date for the board retreat?
I don't.
No, we don't yet. We typically did it end September, early October, and we typically did it on a weekend morning from about 9 to 11:30 or something like that. Maybe,
We could send an email out tomorrow and start to collect.
yeah, maybe
availability.
Betty, maybe when we do talk about, our first meeting with school leadership, we can kill two birds with one stone. Get that on the calendar.
You're not going to do this board retreat and school leadership on the same day.
Oh, no,
are
but
you?
I'm saying,
No,
just do the scheduling in the same,
Because that would be too much.
yes, that's correct. No, and we want to meet with school leadership relatively soon. We want to keep this, because to develop the, I don't want to throw out next week yet, but we'll see. It might work. We'll try.
This is crazy. We got a lot to do this year.
We got a lot to do every year.
I have plenty for board topics for discussion. Let me put a draft
Great.
together There's always an opportunity to add to it and
He's like, please stop
or
talking.
delete. But
I know.
It's pretty full.
And in case anyone's watching this, board retreat is not anything that that you think
Oh,
we should be
God.
hoping it would be. We do have coffee and bagels, but other than that, it's, it's been in the Glenwood Landing Library the last few years.
But it's on a weekend.
It's exactly. And we sit in a circle. Any other?
Yes,
new-
I'm sorry, Lisa, it might be the same one.
Yeah, it might be the same. I'm not sure if this is really a topic that needs to go in, or maybe it's just an update in Dr. Dolan's updates. But one thing that we focused so much on last year was outdoor learning and outdoor, mask breaks and outdoor
Same one.
lunches. And it was talked about at every meeting. And, it's something we were so successful at. And that was really our go-to. I feel like in most of the schools, lunch was just outside, snack was outside. The masks were off outside. And I was just wondering if that's, being focused on this year and what the plan is for out. And, not only, we were successful with, lunch and snack breaks outside, but we were also successful with the outdoor learning. And Chris, Dr. Z had a great presentation in one of the board meetings last year where the teachers spoke about it. And, it was really eye-opening and, just wonderful to see. And I just wanted to make sure that was continuing and hear about the plan.
I might look at including that as a topic. And to paraphrase Hamilton, if it took a pandemic for us to discover outdoor education, it might have been worth it.
Yeah.
Because we really have implemented it. We've used it well. All of the principals agree that it's something we need to continue to expand. And it might be nice to, my experience has been sometimes you don't know everything that's going on until you talk out loud about it. And it might be nice to have a couple of people here talking to us about what we've discovered about outdoor education. And it might be a good and uplifting topic.
We could do it
because
under
is something
student
we've
achievement
succeeded
too.
at.
We could do it under student achievement too, if it's not too much. That's what I'm saying. It
I
doesn't.
was wondering about that too, right? If there was some, you guys will talk about it, but if there was some angle in the student achievement report, which was this silver linings kind of aspect.
But I wouldn't want that to be to the exclusion
not
of
just
a little
learning
more
loss,
focus
but-
on outdoor education. I think it could be, it's part of the lessons learned of the pandemic, but it's also a pretty powerful topic of its own.
But I do think also to Lisa's point, periodic updates highlighting the success of it as we go.
Right.
We just approved a new tent. Let's see what goes on. Let's talk about what's going on in there.
And I think before budget season, the more information we have about the outdoor learning program and what their needs are will help guide maybe where we earmark some money to keep the program going long term.
I want to make one very specific point about it. I was actually planning to bring it up in new business, not realizing that we had this larger topic. So one of the lessons learned, I think the success of outdoor lunch was really illustrated today. It was this incredibly gorgeous day today. And I know at least in one building, the lunch was not outside. And I'm mystified by that. I'm thinking maybe it had to do with the grass being wet. And it feels like these are sort of simple things that we can address. I know, again, not to go to answering goals, not to go to the methods, but it's a perfect example. We have learned these lessons. How do we actually implement what we've learned?
Is there other new business?
So many things. This is probably really for the district safety committee, maybe, and I'm happy to bring it up there. Hi, Joe. I think it's really time to talk about making sure we know what to do if we get a tornado warning while everybody's in school. Everyone's cell phone is going to blow up, and we're all going to look at each other. And if you look at Facebook, last night, there are dozens of people saying, like, what should I do? Should I really get my kids and go to the basement? Like, people here don't know. Why should they? Like, you guys didn't have tornadoes, but now you do. There was a massive tornado outside of Philadelphia. There was a tornado noted in the radar in the Bronx. Sooner or later, we're going to at least get the warning, and people need to know what to do. And horrible scenarios, right? Or like it's right at dismissal. It's, there are a lot of really.
You weren't
There's
here
no
when
good
the
time. That's
tornado
fair.
hit us how long ago was that, Rich? Remember it went right down, it went all through Glen Cove, right? It took out a lot of the houses by the Daisy School.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't that long ago.
It was about 10
But I
years.
think the idea of
right?
emergency
It was a
prep.
microburst, and it was in June of 2015 because it occurred during one of the graduations that I was attending, and we
God.
returned back to the high school, and only to find out that the place had been destroyed. The ground had been destroyed. I think we lost 47 trees just on the school ground.
Oh my.
It was a microburst, and I'm sure it was the same one because where I was, that's the direction it would have traveled.
And I really think we have far too many drills already. The idea that we still have to do however many fire drills a year and everything else. So I'm not saying it has to be a drill, but I'm pretty sure not everyone knows what to do if everyone's cell phone hits like it did, a few times recently.
That sounds really like a safety committee coming back with a recommendation and maybe an update to the safety plan.
Something.
That's what I would think.
I think something's going to happen.
Policy.
Okay, good.
We need to have a shout out to Olivia in that farm to table program.
Oh my God,
She
yes.
announced. We're all completely excited about this.
Yes, yes. And I love the renaming of the Viking Cafe.
There's a lot of fabulous things going on with our food, which was already terrific, right?
I'm so glad you brought that up, Sarah, because I felt because I had forgotten. I
You were
felt
very
that
excited.
I was very excited about this, but I felt like the community needs to know about this in a big way. And wouldn't it be nice to have him come and maybe show us what the food looks like, and maybe we get to taste it? I think it's something that the district should be incredibly proud of. I mean, this is very unique to us. And I think the more that we can publicize it and be sort of leaders in this, I mean, I think that's great for all school
And
districts.
it's such a nice example of like continuing to make things better, even when it was good.
Am I the only one dreaming that maybe someday one of the farms could be some of the gardens in our own district?
Yeah, probably.
But there are other schools.
Hint, hint.
But there are other schools who do that. Patrick Med, right, has its own garden, and they serve
And
some
they
of
serve,
the foods.
West Hampton Beach
yeah.
as well does that. Yeah.
Thank you, Olivia.
Yeah, Olivia, phenomenal.
What else you got, Sarah?
I wanted to ask Chris about what Tri-States was going to review. His report referenced social emotional wellness and inclusion, but the Tri-States review is important, right? This is an opportunity that we only have every few years where we get that level of feedback from others. So I wanted to hear more about how we chose that, et cetera, et cetera.
So we have actually two visits. One is a revisit on the SVO visit from 2018. So that's a 2.5 hour meeting with the internal team. But I will, present the feedback that they give us on what we've done with their feedback from a few years ago. Then we have we're due for a full visit in March. We, after the challenge success presentation, Mr. Doherty and I and several others spoke about how we could leverage the Tri-States visit to help us move those recommendations forward. At the same time, we were talking a lot about things going on in our schools, things going on in the world, and how the connection between wellness and inclusion. Some of the things that came up tonight. So it's kind of a drafty question, a drafty topic. One other thing that we might want to connect to is the engagement goal, and looking at those bullets tonight, looking at goal 3, how we could, leverage the visit to help us gain information on our work towards that goal. And what's specific to that visit, how could they help us? Maybe it's part of that goal. So we felt that question, that topic connected to engagement. But I did, when we put that out to Marty Brooks, let them know that it is drafty, and I'm gonna speak with him and work through that more. So any feedback, or any input that you'd want to have into what you want out of that visit would be helpful too.
I was really wondering, like, it felt very different than what we've done with Tri-States in the past. And so I was wondering if they've done similar things similar to this elsewhere, or if this felt like I don't know, a stretch or something very new. Or
The nature of visits, and I could share in my next update, I'll share with you the visitation topics across the consortium, but they've gravitated more towards wellness, more towards health and wellness topics, and away from the strict academic topics. So there has been an evolution in what they're reviewing. And they do tailor, the visiting team to the topic. So for example, if there was a social studies visit somewhere, that might be one that, I sign up for. But in health and wellness, we will get counselors, we will get school psychologists to come, and I can talk to them about the composition of the team also. The key part I just wanted to add is through the student's eyes. So that was another part we talked about that came directly from Challenge Success. We really want to have the student data and the student voice really be analyzed and reflected upon in this.
I did note that. And I don't know if this impacts topics that we have to have during the year, particularly if he's talking about the revisit of the SVOs, and do we need to hear about that, or I don't know.
Okay. Other new business?
I could go on. No,
Tom, in one sentence, can you just tell us what the plan is for students if they do have to go quarantine?
Sure. We are going to treat it like any other illness. Elementary school students are entitled to 5 hours of instruction. Secondary students are entitled to 10 hours of instruction. We will provide that instruction either during the day, allowing teachers to use some of the time during the day, but we're going to limit how much time they can use during the day, or after school hours. We will allow teachers to group students. That is, if there are 3 students in American Studies who are under quarantine and the teacher can arrange the 3 of them together, up to 5 students. That's the maximum that we would allow. We don't want a huge group session. And the policy says that the board policy indicates that we don't start that usually until we know that the child is going to be out for 10 days. So often, you may remember, you'd wait 10 days to start it, and then you'd owe those days later on. We're waiving that. We're going to start it immediately so that there's no gap in instruction. And the indication is that most teachers will agree to teach their own kids.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, and that would be by Zoom?
Yes, it would be remote, yes.
So if there's a case of COVID, Peter used to give us the, almost like a daily update of COVID count.
Well, that's part of the new legislation.
Yeah.
I don't know if this piece has passed or not yet, but at present, we do not have to report COVID rates to the state. My understanding is last year that wasn't a daily obligation?
Daily. Yeah.
Daily obligation. If I'm reporting it to the state, or if the district's reporting it to the state, and if you'd like to see it, it's easy just to copy you on there.
Don't we want that? I thought that was helpful every day.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't want to give you another task if you're not required to do it.
Well, if we are required to do it, I don't know if I will be doing it, but we'll certainly look
Gotcha.
at that. And if we
whomever.
are obligated to collect the data.
I have
Agreed.
a question that maybe this was maybe I missed it, but if a child is out sick this year, do they have to show a negative COVID test to come back to school or no?
We are using the Department of Health protocols, which I'll send home to you. My recollection is yes, but let me send you home the DHO, and we debated whether to use the federal or the state guidelines, and the nurses and I chose to go with the Department of Health. I'll send you a copy home. And Jean, I haven't mentioned her name very much, but she's been a tremendous help. Jean has been the lead nurse and has served on our committee and has been a tremendous help. So shout out to her as well.
Huge asset. All right. I would like to make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? There we go. All in favor of adjournment? Aye. Thank you very much. Take care.